Chapter 351, Episode 66, Beyond Good and Evil 1. I thought it was wrong at first. Then the gazes of the demon kings focused on me, Asmodeus clapped, and the expressions of the party members were dazed. It started to feel more real for me. Kim Dokcha's company won the grand prize. However, an ominous feeling preceded any joyful feelings. The grand prize, us, in this duet between good and evil. The reason for my ominous feeling was soon revealed. The good or evil of this year's grand prize hasn't been determined yet. The message about good and evil not being determined yet caused a stir among some of the demon kings and constellations. What does it mean that good or evil hasn't been determined yet? The Dakibai replied immediately. The winners of the past grand prize were decided by the consensus of the great Dakibus, the absolute good constellations and the absolute evil constellations. This time, we couldn't come to a conclusion for the first time. You couldn't come to a conclusion, the great Dakibus. The demon kings and constellations looked confused. The constellations belonging to the absolute good or absolute evil would naturally vote for their faction, but the great Dakibus couldn't come to a consensus. No such thing has occurred since the duet between good and evil started. No, it is the first time since the holy and demon war ended. You can't identify it. There can't be such a story. The balance of good and evil must tilt either way. The agitated constellations and demon kings cried out. It wasn't that they didn't understand. Many giant story scenarios were determined by agreement or manipulation of the nebulae. Just as Gigantomachia was sold as a type of tourist product, other giant stories were also sold as preferred stocks, making the good or evil of the story already determined. Yet Out Giant story was made by completely breaking down Gigantomachia. The giant story of Olympus collapse was born out of nowhere. Since it was a story that wasn't scheduled in the beginning, it wasn't possible to decide the good or evil in advance. The Dakibai laughed like this situation was interesting. Well, what can someone like me know about the opinions of the big bosses? In any case, we are here to determine if the story is good or evil. If you have any comments, please raise your hand. The intention of the Dakibai became obvious. This son of a bitch. In the first place, it didn't matter to them if Kim Dokcha's company won the grand prize. The important thing was the good or evil of the story we built, since it would change their status. This story is naturally evil. The first one to open his mouth was the demon king Duke of Everywhere. Duke of Everywhere. His true name was Furkaz, master of the 50th demon realm. The demon king of salvation is a demon king. He is less devious, but he is still a demon king of the demon world. Thus, all his actions are evil. Indeed, it was pathetic logic for the Duke of Everywhere who couldn't even spell properly. Then someone in the opposing camp raised a hand. I disagree with that opinion. Guardian of Youths and Travel Raphael. Raphael shook a finger and started talking. For example, if someone steals something and becomes a wicked person, everyone in the world called him evil, so he became evil. Then what if this evil man used the stolen money to save people? What if he saved a lot of people by giving bread to the poor and water to the thirsty? I nodded at Raphael's argument. Then is he still evil? Is he defined as evil? Well, the Duke of Everywhere was swayed by Raphael's logic. At this time, the demon king sitting beside me raised a hand and helped the Duke of Everywhere. Do you want to discuss the paradox of good and evil here? Asmodeus' red eyes were incensed. Come to think of it, Asmodeus owed Raphael a debt. Raphael nodded. I can do it if you want. Raphael lay on a bed of clouds and flicked his fingers towards the air. Then, on the big screen of the stage, scenes of me and the party members performing in Gigantomachia started to flow. Raphael stared at the screen and started talking. In the end, all existences are made of stories, and stories are made up of the sum of the events. However, it is hard to find evil in the events accumulated in this story. The paradox of good and evil. This paradox implied that the good and evil of all beings were defined by the stories built up by them. Raphael opened his mouth and pointed at the split screens. The first screen was a scene where I visited the underworld and liberated the giants. The demon king of salvation liberated the underdogs from the unjust story that suppressed them. The second screen was a scene where the party members resisted the transition of Gigantomachia from a tourist destination to hunting the breaking the sky sword saint. The members of Kim Dokja's company responded to the unreasonable scenario composition of Gigantomachia. The final screen was a scene where the party members and I burned the torch and opposed Poseidon, a myth-grade constellation. They fought against a major object of force and overthrew the dominance of the giant nebula. Look, is it possible to find any evil in the events that happened? Many of the constellations nodded at Raphael's story, which described the details of the scene. On the other hand, the expressions of the demon kings distorted, at least apart from Asmodeus. How interesting. Then the angels are saying that the demon king of salvation might be a good demon king. Are you admitting it? Nope, your words have a loophole. One, as you say, the stories are the sum of the events. Asmodeus grinned at me. As you know, a story is never a solitary existence. A story is related to other stories and affects it. It is the same for Torch that swallowed the myth. At the same time, another screen appeared and started to play. It was the scene of the first scenario. The screen zoomed in on the eggs of the pregnant grasshopper exploded in my hand. The demon king of salvation left the people on the subway to die. He could have saved everyone. Some angels looked at me with dubious eyes. Asmodeus continued speaking. There was another thing. The next scene that appeared was the 8th scenario. It was the scenario where the strongest incarnation in soul sacrificed himself so everyone could live. The screen showed my 8 lives attribute. Asmodeus kept speaking. The demon king of salvation had extra lives and knew he was the strongest sacrifice. If he wanted, he could have ended the scenario before there were big sacrifices. The murmuring of the constellations intensified. The story continued. Sparing those he wants to live and ignoring those he doesn't want to live, the demon king of salvation is such an existence. He is a demon king who practices the discrimination that you dislike. Discrimination is the most serious sin in the star stream. As if to declare victory, Asmodeus asked a final question. Then I'll ask Eden. Do you still think the demon king of salvation is a good demon king? The crowd fell silent. Some of the angels were watching me with suspicious eyes, while many demon kings were smiling. At this time there was a constellation who rose. Black, everyone has such a contradiction. It was Uriel. The important thing isn't the accumulation of sin, but the direction of change through these events. The demon king of salvation is heading towards the direction of good. These days, angels are very generous with the definition of good and evil. There is a recent rumor that you have a personal crush on the demon king. Is this true? What? I guess it's true. Last time you also wanted. Uriel jumped out. This black square CK black square now. Enormous sparks occurred around both tables. There was a flurry of curses between the archangels and demon kings, and the opinions became turbulent. I wasn't the only target. Someone attacked Jung Hee-won's killing. Someone attacked Lee Hyun-sung's cowardice in the first scenario. There was also Lee Ji-hai who killed her friend. Our lives, the history we accumulated, was being torn apart. The giant story torch that swallowed the myth is revealing its teeth. The faces of the party members were gradually becoming pale. They were people who had already been hurt. The people who risked their lives and somehow survived to this point had become the amusement of the constellations. Wait, is it necessary to do this? Uriel belatedly noticed something and shouted, but the constellations and demon kings were busy dissecting the wounds of Kim Dokja's company. In the end, they started to bite at the past of Shin Yu-sung and Lee Gil-young. It was the moment I learned about Lee Gil-young's trauma and sponsor. Stop it. At my words, the crowd momentarily turned towards me. I knew it would be dangerous if I spoke the wrong words here. Now Kim Dokja's company was like a sailboat placed between two currents. It was a small boat that could sink at any time. However, even a small boat could choose the direction it wanted to go. I was the captain of this boat. Isn't this enough? Don't you know that a conclusion can't be reached this way? I hadn't intervened because I had been waiting for the constellations and demon kings to realize it themselves. Do you think you can decide here what even the great Dakibus couldn't judge? Kim Dokja's company wasn't good or evil. In the first place, I didn't intend to play with the concept of good and evil set by others. Your words are right. Unexpectedly, it was the fifth-ranked demon king, Black Mane Lion Marbas, who spoke. He looked at me and continued, "Surely it is useless to speak here. Stop the useless arguments." Marbas, but in the first place I will ask you. A chill went down my spine. I will let you decide for yourself. Is this story good or evil? Isn't that why we created this place? With this, all the eyes of the demon kings and constellations focused on me. A cold sensation flowed down my spine. Then a system message popped up. You have a share in the giant story torch that swallowed the myth. Please determine the good and evil of the story. If I chose good or evil here, I would be taking sides with one of the good or evil that they claimed. It would be hard if that happened. It might solve the current problem for Kim Dokja's company, but if we chose good or evil here, a terrible future might occur in later scenarios. I worried about it for a long time before making a decision. It couldn't be helped, even if I received the criticism of the demon kings and constellations. The torch that swallowed the myth. Good. I stared at the protagonist who interrupted. The man in the black coat, who had been silent for a while, spoke nonsense. Yu Jonghyuk kept talking. This story, it is good. I was so confused that I closed my mouth. I wondered if Yu Jonghyuk had gone crazy or if he was trapped by something. Beside Yu Jonghyuk, Metatron was slightly smiling towards me. Goosebumps formed on my arm. Don't tell me the reason why Metatron brought Yu Jonghyuk. Those who have shares in the giant story can claim the right to good or evil. The subsequent messages caused the mouths of the constellations and demon kings to drop open. Incarnation, Yu Jonghyuk, has a 22.8% share in the giant story torch that swallowed the myth. Due to Incarnation Yu Jonghyuk's declaration, the story is tilting in the direction of good. It wasn't only me who could define this story as good or evil. It was because everyone in Kim Dokja's company had a share in this story. Do you approve of the story as good? Yu Jonghyuk was looking at me. It was an expression that I couldn't read. He seemed to be asking me what I would do now. Crazy bastard, what are you thinking? I spoke to him through midday tryst, but Yu Jonghyuk didn't answer. I watched him and activated a skill. The exclusive skill, Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint, has been activated. This person is currently in an emotional state that you can't understand. What? If there are no objections from another narrator, the corresponding story will be confirmed as good. There are 30 seconds before it is confirmed. Damn it, I couldn't figure out what the hell was going on. The number counted down and I heard the Demon King screaming. I stared at the surprised faces of the party. Young Hee-won, Lee Hyun-sung, Shin Yu-sung, Lee Gil-young. They were people I wanted to bring to the end of this world. I clenched my fists. Our story shouldn't be declared as good or evil. If that happened, I wouldn't be able to reach the correct ending of this world. Now that Yu Jonghyuk declared it was good, there was only one way to reverse the ruling. The constellation Demon King of Salvation is opening his status. Black feathers pierced through my back and small horns rose from my head. The intense sparks caused all noises to subside. I stared at Yu Jonghyuk and slowly opened my mouth. Chapter 352, Beyond Good and Evil 2. My declaration caused the system message in the air to blink. You are currently the best narrator of the story. You have a 33.7% share in the giant story torch that swallowed the myth. Thanks to your declaration, the story is tilting in the direction of evil. The confused party members rose from their seats. I raised a hand as if to reassure them. I spoke to Yu Jonghyuk through midday tryst. Jonghyuk, if this continues, our story will be evil. Do you want that? My share in torch that swallowed the myth was 33.7%. Meanwhile, Yu Jonghyuk's share was 22.8%. I was 10.9% ahead of him. The opinions of the two speakers are in conflict. The narrators should decide good and evil through consensus. If an agreement isn't decided within the time limit, the ruling will be based on the side with the higher number of shares. The end of the ruling has been extended by 10 minutes. Yu Jonghyuk didn't answer. I once again sent him a message. I don't know what you are thinking, but good and evil shouldn't be decided here. Quickly withdraw the declaration. Then I'll withdraw mine too. The constellation, guardian of youths and travel, is looking at you. The demon king, devil of lust and fury, is pleased with your judgment. The constellation, demon-like judge of fire, is confused by your judgment. I was sorry for Uriel, but the story couldn't be determined as good or evil here. The demon king, ruler of the East Hell, is feeling more favorable towards you. The top of the demon kings, the master of the second demon realm, the ruler of the East Hell, was watching me with a warm face. They seemed to be misunderstanding something. I wasn't taking the side of evil. I impatiently cried out again. Can't you hear me? Then Yu Jonghyuk moved. Yu Jonghyuk walked from the table and pulled out his sword. The incarnation, Yu Jonghyuk, refuses to agree with you. I reflexively avoided his sword. In an instant, the table was split apart and the stage became a mess. The demon king screamed as I also pulled out a sword. Yu Jonghyuk's black demon sword and my unbroken faith collided. My wrist throbbed. This is crazy. The surprised Uriel tried to run this way, but a green barrier prevented the constellations from moving. At present, the constellations and demon kings attending the duet between good and evil can't be hostile to each other. The assistance of other people, regarded the share's decision, is prohibited. It was the worst. Great Dakibai Baram is looking forward to your choice. Great Dakibai Halong is looking forward to your choice. Even the great Dakibus exposed their presence. The Bureau was paying attention to the good-evil ruling of our story. Perhaps the scenario was now being relayed to the star stream through another channel. I stared at the increasingly raging Yu Jonghyuk. I was unable to read his face. I didn't know why Yu Jonghyuk was suddenly doing this. However, I couldn't yield to this guy who knew nothing. Jonghyuk, you might not understand right now, but listen to me. I had to somehow convince this guy. If our story is fixed to either good or evil, a terrifying disaster will arise. According to the original novel, the battle over the pride of absolute good and absolute evil would be huge this season. In the past few seasons, the duet between good and evil had tilted the balance towards good. In other words, the demon kings were sharpening their swords in this duet between good and evil. If good wins here, the second, holy and demon war will start. On the other hand, if evil wins, the position of Eden will decrease and its destruction will be accelerated. I hadn't built up enough stories yet for the holy and demon war. However, I didn't want to let evil win. Explain the details later. Just listen to my words. Is this your prophecy? A shadow of deep disbelief was in Yu Jonghyuk's eyes. Prophecy. When I first met Yu Jonghyuk, I introduced myself as a prophet. I didn't know he still believed this, but it might work out better. Before I could open my mouth, Yu Jonghyuk asked me again. Or is it information from the book called Ways of Survival? What? My heart suddenly jumped. How did he know about Ways of Survival? The sponsor of Incarnation, Yu Jonghyuk, isn't happy with this situation. The constellation, demon-like judge of fire, doesn't want you to fight. The constellation, prisoner of the golden headband, is confused by the unexpected situation. The constellation, secretive plotter, is watching your decision. Sparks flew around Yu Jonghyuk's body. He frowned like he had a headache. As if rebelling against another will, Yu Jonghyuk continued, will this scenario end safely if I follow your words? Yu Jonghyuk, you now. Is this the way I will be used in the future? Gung. Is this how to survive in this ruined world? Suddenly, there was no strength in my hands. The fourth wall is shaking. My surroundings shook, and a small vibration rose in the depths of my body. The tremors rapidly spread from the epicenter. I grabbed my wildly shaking right hand. I looked up and saw Yu Jonghyuk staring at the party members. They know. How much did Yu Jonghyuk know? Answer me, Kim Dokja. The energy flowing from the black demon's sword became stronger. Yu Jonghyuk had opened up the power of transcendence. It meant he really wouldn't back down from now on. The character Yu Jonghyuk is moving the giant story. The giant story torch that swallowed the myth is starting. I couldn't leave it like this. You are the best narrator of this story. You are controlling the story. The giant story torch that swallowed the myth isn't satisfied with your status. The giant story torch that swallowed the myth refuses your domination. What? The story didn't listen to me despite my high shares. Our torch, which broke through Poseidon's barrier, wound around Yu Jonghyuk's black demon sword. The white flame wanting to swallow me was approaching. The exclusive skill fourth wall is strongly activated. Dokja Sasai, wake up. Along with Yu Sanga's words, I released my status. The giant story, Demon World Spring, is protecting you. The giant story torch that swallowed the myth is showing hostility towards you. The two stories we built together collided in the air. The torch that swallowed the myth and Demon World Spring were like ferocious beasts. The torn strings scattered through the air like blood. What are you doing now? Are you crazy? The incarnation, Jung Hee-won, is jumping into the verdict of the giant story. Master, what is happening all of a sudden? Why did Ajasi pick evil? The incarnation, Lee Jihai, is jumping into the verdict of the giant story. Dokja Sasai, Yu Jonghyuk Sasai, both of you stop. The incarnation, Lee Hyun-sung, is jumping into the verdict of the giant story. Don't bother Hyung, you bastard. The incarnation, Lee Gil-young, is jumping into the verdict of the giant story. Ajasi, avoid it. The incarnation, Shin Yu-sung, is jumping into the verdict of the giant story. It was a welcome help. The torch that swallowed the myth was a story involving all of us. In other words, Yu Jonghyuk and I weren't the only ones who could judge this story. The narrators who have entered the judgment, please distinguish between good and evil. If you don't choose good or evil, you can't intervene in the confrontation. The party members were confused. They panicked at suddenly having to choose between good or evil. In the confusion, Lee Gil-young was the first to open his mouth. I will side with Dokja Hyung. Incarnation, Lee Gil-young, has a 3.3% share in the giant story torch that swallowed the myth. Due to Incarnation Lee Gil-young's declaration, the story is tilting in the direction of evil. I quickly called out to them, you can't choose evil anymore, choose good. Do as I say quickly. If Yu Jonghyuk wouldn't withdraw his declaration, then there was only one way remaining. It was to perfectly balance good and evil. The current difference was 14.2%, if the remaining 4 people's shares were joined together. Slowly choose one by one, Yu-sung first. Yes. Incarnation, Shin Yu-sung has a 3.3% share in the giant story torch that swallowed the myth. Incarnation, Jung Hee-won, has a 6.7% share in the giant story torch that swallowed the myth. Incarnation, Lee Hyun-sung, has a 7.3% share in the giant story torch that swallowed the myth. 3 narrators have chosen good. Stop. The last one to choose, Lee Jihai, paused at my cry. The balance has tilted by 3.1% towards good. If the consensus fails in the next 5 minutes, the torch that swallowed the myth will be confirmed as good. The party members had a bigger share in the story than I expected. There was only Lee Jihai remaining. Ajasi, I'm 5.8%. The difference between good and evil was 3.1%. Meanwhile, Lee Jihai had a 5.8% share. No matter what option Lee Jihai chose, It was a situation where good and evil couldn't be balanced. My brain worked quickly. What if I could bring the shares of the other party members to my side? Narrators participating in the good or evil judgment can't gift shares. Damn, this convenient way didn't work. Yu Jonghyuk's black demon sword was flying towards my neck. Stop it! Jung Hee-won, who was able to intervene in the duel, stopped Yu Jonghyuk's sword instead of me. Lee Hyun-sung ran and hugged Yu Jonghyuk's body from behind while the children surrounded me like they were protecting me. Lee Ji-hai stood in the middle with a helpless expression. Why are the two of you fighting now? Yu Jonghyuk's gaze alternated between the party members. It seemed like he wanted to say something. No, I knew what he wanted to say. You are being deceived. His trembling eyes were pouring rage towards me. This guy, he deceived all of us. I thought this day would come eventually. In fact, I thought about it dozens of times a day. Everybody, get out of the way. Yu Jonghyuk amplified his status, blew away Lee Hyun-sung, knocked down Lee Ji-hai and ran this way. Jung Hee-won and Yu Jonghyuk's swords collided. However, Jung Hee-won couldn't use judgment time and wasn't capable of dealing with Yu Jonghyuk. I placed the children behind me and stepped forward. The Demon King, monarch of stars and logic, is rooting for you. The Demon King, devil of principles, wants you to win. The constellation Morning Star Goddess wants good to win. A large number of constellations and demon kings are watching Kim Dokja's company. They were the messages of the existences watching me walk forward. Why were they so obsessed with good and evil? The exclusive skill reading comprehension is activated. I already knew the answer. They were bound to do so. The giant story, practitioner of encouraging good and punishing evil, is continuing. The giant story, guardian of white evil, is continuing. The giant story, more evil than evil, is continuing. The giant story, the suitable good, is continuing. Numerous strings were swarming like insects in the eyes of the constellations and demon kings. It was the stories they had. The stories were controlling them. They were on longer constellations or demon kings. They only existed to execute good and evil in this world. Most of them were merely breeding tools that the old stories used to propagate themselves. These stories were trying to devour our nebula. If the consensus fails in the next 2 minutes, the torch that swallowed the myth will be confirmed as good. I couldn't allow that to happen. I quickly made a decision and shouted, Ji-hai, choose good. But quickly. Lee Ji-hai made a puzzled expression. It was strange that I took her to choose good when it was already the dominant one. Lee Ji-hai chose immediately. The balance has tilted by 8.9% towards good. If the consensus fails in the next 40 seconds, the torch that swallowed the myth will be confirmed as good. The difference was even larger, 8.9%. Yes, this was for the best. I took a deep breath and used all my strength to call out the modifier of a certain being. Abyssal Black Flame Dragon. I knew that he was watching. It meant the occurrences here were known to his incarnation. In this situation, there was only one person who would understand exactly what I wanted. The constellation, Abyssal Black Flame Dragon, is laughing madly. Yu Jonghyuk's black demon sword filled with the power of transcendence flew to my neck. It was an inevitable blow. Then a crack appeared in the ceiling of the banquet hall. Yu Jonghyuk looked up at the ceiling, but it was already too late. The running Yu Jonghyuk was crushed by the fragments of the broken ceiling. Some large pieces were avoided, but there were too many stones pouring down. I saw a shadow in the dirty dust. The hair was sweaty like the person had rushed here. The bandages half released from the left arm was blowing in the wind. In the dust, this person smiled as she trampled on Yu Jonghyuk. I knew you couldn't do this without me. The Incarnation, Han Soo-young, is jumping into the verdict of the giant story. Chapter 353, Beyond Good and Evil 3. Under the rubble, Yu Jonghyuk's hands were sticking out. Han Soo-young stared down at Yu Jonghyuk. This jerk, always appearing and trampling on people, do you feel good doing so? Incarnation, Han Soo-young, has an 8.9% share in the giant story torch that swallowed the myth. As expected, Han Soo-young would have the correct amount of shares. Narrators participating in the good or evil judgment can't gift shares. It meant that those who hadn't yet participated would be able to exchange their shares. Han Soo-young watched me and grumbled through midday tryst. I lost 0.1% of this story to Lee Xiaohua. Perhaps Han Soo-young had adjusted her shares ownership to Lee Xiaohua as soon as she learnt the information here. Then she came straight to this place. Han Soo-young turned towards the surrounding constellations and declared with a growl, "I am evil. In addition, that fucking Kim Dokja standing over there is definitely evil." Han Soo-young made me evil regardless of everything else and continued looking at Yu Jonghyuk and the party members. However, Kim Dokja's company isn't good or evil. This person shouting with her short hair flying looked amazing. At this time, Han Soo-young could be seen as the main character, not Yu Jonghyuk. The time limit has expired, and the judgment of good and evil has been finished. A total of 91.8% has participation in the judgment of good and evil. The participation rate of good and evil is 45.9%. 45.9%. Good and evil are in perfect equilibrium. The astonished demon kings and constellations were looking this way. I looked back at them and added, "We aren't defined by your definitions." The giant story torch that swallowed the myth is a story that can't be distinguished between good and evil. The message drove in a wedge. I could see the Dakibai in charge of hosting this event smiling. It seemed that he thought it would be like this, or perhaps he wanted this ending. The Bureau must be excited right now. It was due to the huge amount of indirect messages entering my ears. The constellation Prisoner of the Golden Headband is satisfied with your judgment. The constellation Queen of the Darkest Spring is proud of you. The constellation Father of the Rich Knight is pleased with your medal. A number of constellations of the neutral system favor your nebula. The constellations of the neutral system have sponsored you 281,000 coins. It was expected that the constellations of the neutral system would like this. Some choices would occur while rejecting other choices. Someone has recommended your story to the Starstream. You have acquired a new story. Of course, this didn't apply to all constellations. Your choice has caused resentment among some of the constellations of what? The good or evil of the story isn't determined. The atmosphere of the constellations and demon kings were rapidly changing. The constellations of the absolute good system oppose the ruling. The constellations of the absolute evil system oppose the ruling. An unusual flow was detected around the two tables, as if a riot would occur. Such a thing can't happen. Bureau, judge it again. What the hell is this? From the demon kings to the archangels, all the gazes of the attendees were fixed on the Dakibai. The advanced Dakibai felt the crisis and responded while sweating. Sorry, it isn't possible. No one can reverse the outcome of a story that has already been judged. That's the rule. Fortunately, the Bureau kept to its principles. However, keeping to the principles didn't always bring about a good result. I was going to wait and see this season. Things were flowing differently from expectations. The mid and low-ranked demon kings rose from their seats and released their status. If the targets can't decide good and evil, we have to make a decision in another way. Once the demon kings moved, the archangels stood up like they wouldn't lose. Many demon kings are showing hostility to the angels of the absolute good system. Many archangels are showing vigilance towards the demon kings. The balance of good and evil is shaking. The two camps confronted each other, and it seemed they would rush forward at any moment. I stayed close to the party members and watched the situation. By my side, Jung Hee-won pulled out the sword of judgment and spoke in a tense voice. Doc SI. It's okay. I guarded the party members, who seemed relieved. The constellation and demon war might take place, but such a huge event wouldn't occur here. The constellation Scribe of Heaven is dissuading the archangels. The Demon King, ruler of the East Hell, is controlling the Demon Kings. Perhaps Scribe of Heaven Metatron and ruler of the East Hell Agars knew this as well. Good and evil must exist. If the scenario was triggered here, the two camps would be destroyed by a disaster. If I was right, the damned Dakibus of the Bureau would understand this the best. The great Dakibai Baram has revealed his presence on the stage. A great Dakibai appeared like he had been waiting. Great Dakibai Baram. I was familiar with him in the original novel. Stop it, I'm sure you know that fighting here won't solve the problem. The hard voice caused the Demon Kings and constellations to revolt. The Bureau can't intervene in this fight. Do you mean to end it like this? Some of the constellations and Demon Kings gathered here were close to the myth level. Thus, it was natural for them to not listen to the great Dakibai. The story might have been different if the Dakibai King came directly. Complaints came from everywhere and Baram told them. There is no reversal of the ruling. In addition, we can't allow hostilities in this place. The resolute declaration caused the sparks flying in the air to block the absolute good and absolute evil members. The opposing constellations were about to rebel again when Baram continued. Your complaint is that the status of good and evil can't be determined. If that's the case, how about one more giant story? What does this mean? We will open up a previous scenario to determine the status of this season's good and evil. I couldn't conceal my confusion at the words of the great Dakibai. This guy, what now? The Star Stream agrees with the decision of the great Dakibus. The duet between good and evil wants a new scenario to determine the status of good and evil. The probability of the Star Stream was moving. The rivers of the galaxy were flowing towards the desired story of many constellations. The scenario that this probability was moving towards could be found in the hands of the Star Stream. The ruler of the East Hell asked, "Do you mean to open the constellation and demon war now?" If you want. Baram's declaration caused an uproar among numerous constellations. Baram made an unknown smile as he looked at me. However, please set the stage of the scenario yourself. During the intermission, the constellations and demon kings spoke among themselves about where to set the stage for the constellation and demon war. Fortunately, the hostile gazes poured towards us seemed to relax thanks to the Dakibai's intervention. The party members were exhausted by the sudden situation and sat down. Han Soo-young kicked at Yu Jonghyuk's hand that was sticking out from the pile of stones. What is this? Why hasn't he come out yet? Yu Jonghyuk showed no reaction. I observed the hand of the buried man, but I was afraid to grab hold of this hand. The words spoken by him were still ringing in my ears. Is it information from the book called Ways of Survival? Where did he hear this story? How far had the filtering been lifted, and how much did he know about ways of survival? Han Soo-young and I cooperated to bring him out. Yu Jonghyuk was unconscious. It was strange. He couldn't pass out just because he was hit by a pile of stones. Why is this jerk in this state? I looked closer and saw that Yu Jonghyuk's body wasn't normal. I didn't know where he went, but his body was covered in large and small wounds. There were traces of him killing and cutting something. In the past 2 days, Yu Jonghyuk seemed to have wandered through a scenario I didn't know about. Under these circumstances, he couldn't overcome his anger towards me and suffered severe injuries. Han Soo-young activated Midday Tryst and immediately sent me a message. Jonghyuk has noticed the existence of ways of survival. I know, Yu Jonghyuk told me before you came. I gave a brief overview of Yu Jonghyuk's words. Han Soo-young frowned deeply when she heard the story. This jerk, where did he hear about it? I don't know, where have you been? I killed the remaining prophets. I wondered if the information leaked from them. You figure it out. It was as I expected. The prophets would become characters once they ran out of information. Information didn't leak from the prophets, in my opinion. I looked at Metatron, who was discussing something with the archangels in the distance. Perhaps Yu Jonghyuk became aware of ways of survival through Metatron. Han Soo-young said. Asmodeus also knew about the existence of ways of survival. Perhaps most of the top constellations know. The top constellations. It was also time for the seekers of the end to become active. Finally, I could start to see the end of this long-running scenario. I looked down at the fallen Yu Jonghyuk. Han Soo-young stared at me. "Dokja, think about what's important right now." I nodded. I looked up and Great Dakibai Baram was staring at me. "Also have to participate in the constellation and demon war." "You crazy. It isn't a scenario we can enter with our level right now." Han Soo-young was right. Originally, the constellation and demon war was a main scenario in the 80s. I hadn't intended to do this either. It was better to avoid the dangerous scenarios if possible. However, I couldn't do that with the constellation and demon war. It didn't matter if it didn't wake up, but once the scenario occurred, it absolutely couldn't be avoided. Doesn't matter if it is a higher-ranked scenario. The problem is the stage of the war. Baram clapped in the distance. The constellation sat in place and Baram opened his mouth. "We will end the recess. Constellations and demon kings, please choose the stage of the scenario." As if waiting, the constellations and demon kings stood up and shouted. "The stage of the constellation and demon war will be the 14th demon realm. Our guardian tree is a good giant story stage." "What nonsense is that? The stage is." They all tried to make a place favorable to them as the stage. There was also a place I wanted as the stage, but no one would support me if I spoke. I thought to myself, how to do? "Dokja Sesai, do you want the island as the stage?" Then I heard a message from Yu Sanga in my head. "Perhaps I can help." I found something interesting inside the wall. "Interesting?" There was no answer from Yu Sanga. Instead, I heard a rustling sound in my head. After a while, an uneasy atmosphere occurred in the loud hall. Several constellations were whispering together. The information that just came in. What is that true? I noticed their whispers. Were they constellations with the power of revelation? The atmosphere was becoming graver. The whispers spread like waves. After 5 minutes, even Metatron was making a serious expression. The voices of the arguing constellations and demon kings died down one by one. After a while, they started to glance at each other. It was the demon kings who acted first in the fierce battle of wits. "I'm sorry, there is a bit of work to do and I have to go." "Me too, it is the same for me." Several demon kings suddenly disappeared from their seats. I watched their faces closely. They were those associated with the Seekers of the End. "I'm sorry, but I have to leave for a while." Once the morning star goddess of the guardian tree, Nebula, spoke these words, the situation became a one-sided wave. "I have a little work too." More and more people left and Metatron sighed lightly before glancing at Baram. "I think you'll have to decide on your own." Great Dakibai Baram's eyes widened as he looked at the air. "Interesting, a revelation at this timing." Several constellations noticeably flinched at the word revelation. Baram laughed. "Good. Even if everyone doesn't speak, the stage has already been decided." I listened to the words of the Great Dakibai and was in a daze. What the hell just happened? Then pain suddenly shot through my head. "The probability of the star stream is doubting you." I perceived a terrible gaze starting at me. It was gazing at me as if it found something suspicious. The gaze lasted for a moment before disappearing. "The star stream has turned its gaze from you." I wiped my sweat and cautiously called out to Yu Sanga. "Yu Sanga Sesai, what did you do?" Yu Sanga was silent, like she was looking for words to explain. Then she said, "Dokja Sesai, do you know how constellations read the future?" "I know." There were two main ways in which the constellations could read the future. One way was to gather data to measure the future, like Hermes' system. The other way was to receive a revelation like the Maori, Eden, and some of the demon kings. It was a force called divine revelation. Yu Sanga searched for words for a moment, before replying with a light laugh. "Well, I think I became a god." Chapter 354, Beyond Good and Evil 4. At this moment, Bihyung was watching the screen of duet between good and evil at the bureau. The stage of the second constellation and demon war will be the Reincarnation Island, located in the Dark Fault. The moment the great Dakibai's declaration was heard, all the Dakibis of the Bureau were in an uproar. No, why the island all of a sudden? Why are the great Dakibis thinking? Even the great Dakibis couldn't set the stage for the 80th main scenario, if the will of the Starstream didn't move. The Starstream is willing to open the 80th main scenario. A new main scenario has been created. Bihyung was surprised by the system message. Did the Starstream really move? The series of shocking scenario changes made Bihyung stunned. Bihyung, a revelation was just received. A revelation. After a while, a new panel was prepared. The screen hadn't surfaced yet, but Bihyung knew what it was. The Plate of Revelation. An unknown slab that only the constellations and demon kings who had acquired the power of revelation could see. The material was unknown, and even the space and coordinates weren't clearly known. The Bureau could only observe the strange object. Each nebula had a different name for this plate. Divine Revelation, a single word, the old devil's whisper. It was an unidentified object that spoiled the information of the future, forcing the Bureau to pay attention to it. The method that the constellations of the star stream used to read the future was simple. Sometimes there was a hole in the plate of revelation, and a series of story fragments would be released from the hole. The fragments that spilled out had information about the future. The constellation and demon kings recognized it, combined words, and used this to predict the future or read their fortunes. The stigma called revelation was made. It was actually just reconstructing these words. Bihyung asked, "Is there another turn in the plate of revelation?" "Yes, it has been a problem since it started shaking a few years ago." The original version of the revelation released future information, but it didn't have a significant impact on the Bureau's scenario probability. The future reconstructed through the revelations were uncertain and unclear. However, there had been a crack in this plate since a few years ago. Through that crack, whole information of the future came through. A strange hole occurred a few days ago. The hole that occurred a few days ago caused a problem in the probability that couldn't be overlooked even by the star stream. Information that shouldn't have been passed on crossed through that broken hole without damage. Bihyung still had a headache when he thought about the work at that time. Strange strings had emerged through the hole for a while. 3 Ways to Survive in a Ruined World. The name seemed like the title of a book, and the constellations of the star stream fell into chaos. What is 3 Ways to Survive in a Ruined World, TXT? Does ruin mean the black square of every scenario? The constellations who neglected the scenarios and remained relaxed started to act like their feet were on fire after this revelation was released. The rumors about the apocalypse spread, and there were rumors about the end of the star stream. The screen is ready. Bihyung watched the black-white screen nervously. A few words that emerged through the hole caused the entire star stream to shake. What type of revelation would occur this time? After a while, the screen of the revelation appeared. Then there was a very small hole in the center of the plate. There is no change, eh? The next moment, the Dakibis were astonished by the whitish object that appeared inside the hole. It was someone's mouth. Microphone test. The Dakibai cried out, "What is this?" The Bureau was in chaos as the mouth kept on talking. "Can you hear me? I'm going to give you a revelation now. I'll only show you for a second, so look and remember." Along with the clear and cheerful voice, there was the sound of pages turning. After a while, fragments of a story passed through the hole. How to Survive in a Ruined World, the 3rd Way. The revelation appeared clearly. It was truly like a divine revelation. That method is on Reincarnation Island. The story fragments scattered in the air, and the voice said, "Have you seen it? Then goodbye." The hole closed and the voice disappeared. Bihyung muttered, "Oh my God." None of the shocked Dakibis of the Bureau could open their mouths. Bells were ringing from all over. The unstoppable inquiries of the constellations were pouring in. The duet between good and evil was still playing on the panel on the other side. I will say it once again. The voice of great Dakibai Baram rang out. The stage of the second constellation and demon war will be the Reincarnation Island, located in the Dark Fault. After the duet between good and evil, our group immediately returned to Earth. All the way back to the industrial complex, the party members were excited. In particular, Yong Hee-won and Lee Ji-hai were checking the performance of the plaques we received. Grand prize of duet between good and evil. In the star stream, the status generally rose only through the accumulation of stories. However, there were extremely rare star relics that raised the status without needing the accumulation of stories. This was the case with the plaques awarded at the duet between good and evil. My sword seems lighter. Is this enough to be able to swing Hyunsung Odyssey lightly? Lee Ji-hai's murmur caused Lee Hyunsung to tremble. Certainly, the plaque was more effective than getting 2 quasi-myth grade stories. Given that all the quasi-myth grade stories I acquired were those I gained after suffering and dying, it was a tremendous boost. 5,000,000 coins exchange ticket. In addition, they received 5 million coins as prize money. Dr. Sasai, we're rich now. I won't have to worry about coins for a while. Kids, how much did you get? Yong Hee-won was busy asking questions to the children, who received the Best Chemistry Award. Shin Yu-sung, honestly, I was a bit more active. Give me another 100,000 coins. What nonsense is this? It will naturally be split in half. It is the same with the story shares. Lee Hyun-sung stopped the children. The party members seemed to be in good spirits for their own reasons, but on the other hand, they were also glancing at me. In fact, there is a question that everyone hasn't asked. Why did you, Jang Hyuk, and I fight? The party members had seen the scene with their own eyes, but no one asked me about it. Maybe they were instinctively avoiding the topic. Perhaps it was their own consideration as they waited for me to speak first. I was still listening to Yu Sanga in my head, while I carried the unconscious Yu Jong-hyuk on my back. You mean, you leaked the contents of Ways of Survival through the hole in the fourth wall? Yes. The constellations accepted it as a revelation. That's right. I didn't understand at first. The information sent out of the fourth wall became a revelation to the constellations. In the first place, the role of the revelation in the original novel. No, wait. Don't tell me. There were many things in my head. Yu Sanga asked, Dr. SSI, have you noticed the fourth wall might be the original words? Yes, I don't know the exact sense, but originally, the fourth wall is a stage term, a wall separating the play from the wall. The characters in the play would never be able to recognize the fourth wall. It is because they don't exist outside the stage. Outside the stage, it was the reality I lived in. Goosebumps formed on my arms. Indeed, if the name fourth wall had its origins in the same meaning as Yu Sanga's description, it was natural there would be a Ways of Survival inside this wall. It was because the contents of Ways of Survival were created in reality. In other words, the revelation was a spoiler that flowed from the novel to reality. One couldn't find the source, so it became a divine revelation in the eyes of the characters. Yu Sanga continued speaking. I always thought it was strange. The filtered information about Ways of Survival was suddenly released, however. That time coincided with when I entered the fourth wall. Coincides? Yes, the book blocking the hole I entered through was Ways of Survival. The title could be seen very well. Now I understood everything. The reason why the constellations and demon kings suddenly knew about Ways of Survival. It was why the development that wasn't in the original novel suddenly unfolded. The information they knew had all leaked through the hole in the fourth wall. It is a bit complicated, but this is a good thing. Right. Yu Sanga replied with a laugh. She was probably thinking the same thing as me. By the way, I can't use it very often. I noticed a lot of looks. Oh, I'm sorry. I have to go for a minute because the seniors are calling. Then Yu Sanga's voice disappeared from my head. She was the youngest member of the library, but she had a lot of sense. In any case, Thanks to Yu Sanga's performance, we got a new card to use. The fourth wall allowed me to manipulate the revelations that the constellations received. Until it was revealed to be a false revelation, I could use the information to incite the constellations. Han Suyong walked beside me and opened her mouth. You haven't spoken in a while. I was just thinking to myself for a while. You must have a lot of thoughts. Han Suyong bit her lips and used midday tryst while talking. What are you going to do now? What else? I have to prepare for the next scenario. The Constellation and Demon War is the 80th scenario, and it will start in a month. Apart from that, Han Suyong had a complicated look in her eyes. She was watching Yu Jonghyuk being carried on my back. You know what happens when Yu Jonghyuk will wake up. Yu Jonghyuk was aware of the identity of ways of survival. I didn't know what he knew, but I couldn't keep hiding information from him. He might be shocked and receive a terrible wound, but nevertheless. Han Suyong told me. Reference, I'm against it. What thing you're about to say? Han Suyong acted like she knew my thoughts. She sighed lightly and looked at the ground. With your personality, it is strange that you have been hiding it so far. Han Suyong seemed to misunderstand me. If I could have hidden it better, I would have hidden as much as I could, if possible, until the end of the story. Han Suyong shook her head. Can hide it as much as possible. Just pretend you don't know. Pretend to be a prophet as you have done so far. You think they will believe it. I have to talk now. It isn't just Yu Jonghyuk but the other party members as well. Han Suyong's eyes grew bigger at my words. What nonsense is this? Why are you going to tell them? They deserve to know. I tried it before. However, the characters can't know anything about ways of survival. They think it is just a joke. Might be different now. The filtering is released. Han Suyong opened her mouth before closing it again. Instead of pressing me, she searched the faces of the people who didn't know anything. A faint contempt towards me could be seen in Han Suyong's eyes. It for you, or is it for them? Have already deceived these people. Now you are going to ask for forgiveness. I don't mean to be forgiven. Like Han Suyong, I also studied their faces. The strong but delicate Yong Hee-won, the sincere and unsophisticated Lee Hyun-sung, the tough but sweet Lee Ji-hai, the adult but pure Shin Yu-sung. I looked at their faces and recalled the descriptions I knew. Some of them were described, and others had different faces from the descriptions. They were faces I knew but didn't know. Shin Yu-sung suddenly looked back and waved towards me. I spoke while waving back at the child. I want to be real companions. Han Suyong was silent for a long time before quietly turning around and disappearing into the factory. In the distance, a message from her came back like an echo. I say it clearly, I oppose it. Not long after, we arrived at the factory, and each of us took a rest to recover. That evening, I summoned all the members of Kim Dokja's company apart from the unconscious Yu Jonghyuk. I had Bu block the channel and placed a thick barrier to prevent other constellations from listening. After some preparations, I looked back at the party members. I have something to say to you. I opened my mouth but couldn't speak easily. Perhaps she thought I was playing a joke, but Lee Ji-hai trembled. Ajasi, what is wrong with you all of a sudden? You are scary. I tried to smile at Lee Ji-hai. I had been troubled for a long time. I had been certain that this moment would come. Lee Hyun-sung and Shin Yu-sung were looking at me with worry. I saw the people who were worried about my first, even in this situation, and bit my lips. Some of you. The eyes of the group shook. I saw Han Suyong turn away. Then I spoke like I was pulling the trigger. You are characters of a story. Chapter 355. Beyond Good and Evil 5. The expressions of the party members changed at my words. Yong Hee-won's eyes were wide while Lee Ji-hai looked confused. Lee Hyun-sung had big eyes. Finally, Shin Yu-sung. Kim Dokja has the wrong id-e. The fourth wall was heard in my head. It isn't too late now. I didn't know if it was the will of the fourth wall or the weak part of my mind. The fourth wall reflected my feelings to some extent, so both might be true. Either way, this time I made a decision. I know it is hard to understand my words. I had to tell this story to the group of people. I'll slowly explain it from the beginning. I talked for a long time. One day, the novel I was reading became reality. In that story, I met them. I didn't tell them the whole story, but at the same time, I didn't lie. I knew about the group members before I met them. I didn't speak properly about the fact that I knew the future. I monopolized information alone and deceived people. I spoke about all of it. It was as if I was bringing out the old darkness. A little further away from the party, Han Soo-young was staring at me with a frown. I understood her feelings. It was the same with Han Soo-young of the 1863rd round. However, I couldn't live like Han Soo-young. This story should be done properly. To move forward properly, some stories must be communicated. Someday, just as Yu Jong-hyuk. I am a regressor. Maybe Yu Jong-hyuk also felt like me. He knew the future, experienced the same story again and again, and met the party members in countless rounds. Then he sent them away. I could understand Yu Jong-hyuk's feelings when he poured out the story without any tricks. Thus, I brought you here. My story was over, yet no one opened their mouths after the story was over. It wasn't that they didn't understand my story. It was a long story that even a young child could comprehend. Nevertheless, the party members didn't speak. I bowed and continued. I want to sincerely apologize to all of you. I'm really sorry to only be telling you this now. I wanted to know, what was the group thinking? What were they feeling? Even so, I didn't use Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint. In this situation, it really would be a deception if I read them using this skill. I wanted to use my own strength without relying on any skills. I wanted to believe that whatever they thought and felt inside, the actions they chose was really their decision. I slowly looked up and met Lee Jihai's eyes. Lee Jihai's eyes were red. The moment I saw these eyes, I suddenly realized something. I already knew these eyes. Then Master knew all of the future. They were exactly the same as when Lee Jihai heard Yu Jong-hyuk's story. Lee Jihai slowly opened her mouth. Then until now, you knew all about the future. As if the original character was reading the given script, Lee Jihai spoke. I also responded to her like there was a script. That's right. Yes. Lee Jihai gritted her teeth and told me, then now, why are you telling us this? The wounded sword demon was furious. I read the original novel and could predict what she would say. What the hell are we to you? Lee Jihai's shoulders trembled slightly as she bowed her head. The situation that followed continued to flow in my mind. Lee Jihai would pull out her sword and might attack me because she couldn't suppress her anger. There were many such occasions in the original novel. However, Lee Jihai chose a way that I didn't expect at all. Let's say that you knew the future. It was all planned and Ajasi used us for your purpose. Let's say we are characters of that damn ways of survival and everything is set. Lee Jihai was crying, watching me while biting her pallid lips. Then, why did you throw your life away for us so many times? I saw the tears falling down her cheeks and tried to open my mouth several times. It was an unexpected question. It was because it was unexpected that I couldn't answer. Answer me. If we are really characters in a fictional novel, why did you die for us over and over? It was a question that I couldn't answer with the ways of survival that I read. The fourth wall is shaking violently. Lee Jihai wiped her eyes and hit my shoulder as she walked past me. Jung Hee-won hurriedly chased after her. Dr. Sesai, we'll talk later. Shin Yu-sung hesitated as she stared at me helplessly before following after Jung Hee-won. Lee Hyun-sung had blank eyes as he walked out of the room with a bowed head. The only ones remaining were Han Soo-young, Lee Seolhwa, and Lee Gil-young. Lee Gil-young was staring at me with complicated eyes while Lee Seolhwa bowed her head like she was shocked. Han Soo-young patted Lee Seolhwa's back and snapped at me. Kim Dokja, leave for a while. A hospital room. I gazed at my mother's sleeping face. I visited the hospital room in the interlude because the party members didn't return after a long time. Since the last major surgery, my mother slept like this all day. She had shaded eyes and haggard cheeks. I peered at my mother's face and was reminded of a time when I visited her in prison. What did my mother think when her son visited her and only talked about a novel? Your expression is dark. You are awake. I woke up from the moment you entered. It was a voice that didn't contain any energy. I dragged a matted blanket up and covered my mother's neck. My mother smiled faintly. It is good to almost die. My son is taking care of me. Get better quickly. Talk to me, anything is fine. I struggled for a moment before opening my mouth. In the 154th round of Ways of Survival, Yu Jonghyuk brought up the story of his regression with the party members. Did you talk to the group about ways of survival? How do you know? My mother stretched out her bony hand and grabbed mine. You thought they would blame you. You thought they would feel deceived and ask why you hid the information. It didn't happen like that. You don't know how to seek forgiveness. I silently nodded. Answer me. If we are really characters in a fictional novel, why did you die for us over and over? Li Jihai's voice was revolving in my ears. My mother said, it isn't up to you to decide if it is a matter to forgive. Then, maybe the person behind you can tell you. I turned my head and saw Jung Heewon standing at the door of the hospital room. I excused myself and left the hospital room. Jung Heewon scratched her cheeks and suggested, shall we take a walk? We walked down the corridor of the hospital wing. It was a simple corridor where no decorations could be found. It seemed to be Yu Jonghyuk's taste. This guy had been tinkering with the factory in the last 3 years. In fact, the end of this corridor contained the hospital room where Yu Jonghyuk was lying. Jung Heewon looked out the window and opened her mouth first. Thank you for telling me. I didn't know how much Jung Heewon had been troubled before saying this. It was worse because I couldn't see her face. The party members could be seen outside the window. Lee Gilyoung and Shin Yusung were bickering, while Lee Hyunsung and Lee Sealhwa comforted Lee Jihai. Everyone will be fine. Jihai will take a bit of time, but... Heewon SSI. Before I could finish my words, Jung Heewon turned to look at me. Her face was smiling as usual. I closed my mouth and Jung Heewon asked, are you surprised because I'm fine? That's not it. No, it is. Jung Heewon had long known that I had future information. Perhaps among the characters, she was the person who knew the most about me. Jung Heewon spoke as she started stretching. It isn't a big deal. This is a world where monsters and docubus exist. It is something special that turned the novel into a reality. I understand the past now. The reason why Dr. SSI said I didn't appear in the future. Does that mean I wasn't in the novel that Dr. SSI read? Yes. Bu floated like a cloud and moved above Shin Yusung's head. Jung Heewon told me. Then I was able to safely come here thanks to Dr. SSI. That Heewon. Thank you for finding me. I'm not being sarcastic. I mean it sincerely. I knew. I was already familiar with the tone Jung Heewon used to tease me. Even so, I didn't know what to say. Don't be gloomy and depressed by yourself and look forward to the future. If you like, give me a promotion faster. Now, this is a handshake to cheer up. Jung Heewon grabbed my hand with a strong force. Something warm suddenly rose inside me. I firmly bit my lips. Jung Heewon, she isn't okay. I could feel the pulse from Jung Heewon's hand. She would also be sad. She would be in pain and it would be hard for her. Even so. Jung Heewon held my hand tightly for a while before letting go with a smile. Then she asked, by the way, Dr. SSI, I have a question. Yes, ask. If this world is a novel, it means there is a protagonist. As expected, Jung Heewon was sharp. I told the group about ways of survival, but I didn't say who the protagonist was. However, Jung Heewon was already aware of the identity of the protagonist. Jung Heewon was staring at the end of the corridor. Is that why you were fighting? I haven't exactly spoken to him, but it seems so. Since you started it, you need to see the end properly. Do you know? I nodded. That person won't be easy. I knew, still it couldn't be avoided. For the next 2 days, I was in Yu Jonghyuk's hospital room. I hardly met with other people. I was worried but decided to remain calm. I believed that the people needed time to think. It wouldn't be too late to talk once the party members were ready. Yu Jonghyuk still didn't wake up. The wounds of his flesh have almost recovered. I thin Kit is a problem of the mind. A problem of the mind. It seems he is refusing to wake up. Perhaps he experienced a severe shock. Those were Aileen's words. She exchanged the story pack and left, leaving only Yu Jonghyuk and I in the room. The floating dust settled on his nose. I opened my mouth while watching Yu Jonghyuk. You grabbed me first and dropped me down the bridge. I knew he couldn't hear me, but I still wanted to talk. Get your hand off me and get lost, you damn jerk. I believe you. You are definitely a prophet. The first time I encountered him on the bridge, suddenly a laugh emerged. Honestly, you aren't in a position to blame me for anything. You are a regressor. How many people died because of you? Once I started speaking, the memories poured out like a waterfall. It was like Pandora's box. It felt as if a lot of time had passed. I had spent a lot of time with this person. I thought I understood you better than anyone, but I don't know these days. Why did you do that during the flood of disasters? That person is my companion. Why did you call me a companion? You wouldn't say that normally, stabbing me in Dark Castle, even though I told you to kill me at the time. Kim Dokja, no Kim Dokja. Every single memory caused numerous emotions to rise. The scenarios, which were really serious at the time, became stories once they were over. We were left with the stories. Still, I am grateful for the revolutionary game. I lived at that time because of you. Still, it is weird. Why did you sell my name when hitting the wrong industrial complex? Well, maybe you were trying to fuck with me. I poured out the things I was thinking about and gradually became sleepy. I hadn't slept properly. The complaints continued even as my consciousness dimmed. The times I fought with him passed like I was reading Ways of Survival. The disaster of questions, the strongest sacrifice, Peace Land, the tomb of the scenario, the Demon King selection and Gigantomachia. It was hard to find a battlefield where I didn't fight with him. I thought back on those times. Perhaps it will be okay. I could convince him somehow if it was the Yu Jonghyuk I knew. We had never talked about it properly. What if I took the time to explain it step by step? It was Yu Jonghyuk, not someone else. I could see Yu Jonghyuk's back in the distance. I forgot it was a dream and approached him. Yu Jonghyuk. At this moment, there was a stinging pain from my head and words appeared. It was a scene from Ways of Survival. The scene where Yu Jonghyuk was betrayed by Anna Croft and lived miserably. They were the last words Yu Jonghyuk left. I will absolutely never forgive you. Yu Jonghyuk turned around and spoke to me. Killing energy was emitted from the black demon sword. Kim Dokja. I felt a coolness from my neck and woke up. I gasped while sweating before realizing it was a dream. The dim moonlight was coming in through the window. It was a bare hospital room. I slowly rubbed my eyes. Then I realized something was wrong. Yu Jonghyuk. The bed was empty. Yu Jonghyuk couldn't be seen anywhere in the room. The selected ringer's solution was floating in the air. I hurriedly got up, but I couldn't feel Yu Jonghyuk anywhere. On the bed, the pocket watch with the familiar design remained. The remaining time until the Constellation and Demon War was 26 days. On this day, Yu Jonghyuk left Kim Dokja's company. Chapter 356, Forgotten People of the Scenario 1. It had been a week since Yu Jonghyuk disappeared. In the meantime, the atmosphere of Kim Dokja's company changed a bit. The people were visible reticent. Rather than express it or talk about it, they silently trained. Jung Hee-won was one of them. They trained their skills and their bodies. They pretended to do this while watching a certain person. I can't stand it anymore. How long will this atmosphere last? Lee Hyun-sung, who was using Great Mountain Push against the ground, was shocked by Jung Hee-won's exclamation while Shin Yu-sung's shoulders shook as she used advanced diverse communication. The most surprised one was Lee Jihai, who was training in Kendo. Jung Hee-won pressed her. Jihai, are you not going to talk to Dokja Sesai anymore? I don't know. Are you still angry? No matter what, you should have a conversation. Li Jihai shouted, I'm not angry. If I think about it, it isn't a big deal. It is similar to the prophets. I know Ajasi is a good person. I just don't like the word character. It had been a week since Kim Dokja dropped the bomb. The party members thought about Kim Dokja's words in their own way. In summary, this was the feeling. On the first day, all party members felt shock. On the second day, they thought it was similar to what already happened, Jung Hee-won said. Thinking about it, this is the same thing as the constellations. On the third day, some people were amazed by the novel, Lee Sealwa said. How much importance did I have? On the fourth day, they thought Kim Dokja was like a god of this world if he read the novel, Lee Gil-young said. I knew that Haeyoung was a god. On the fifth day, there were people claiming that Kim Dokja should be the one comforted, not the party members, Shin Yusung said. Perhaps he is the one having the hardest time right now. Lee Hyun-sung heard the story and said, certainly, we don't know how Dokja SSI is feeling now. A few days ago, Jonghyuk SSI disappeared. The party members nodded in agreement with Lee Hyun-sung. Eventually, their gazes once again concentrated on Lee Jihai. Jihai. Lee Jihai was red-faced as she yelled. How can I say anything when Ajasi is walking around like a dead man? Still, then why didn't Dr. Ajasi say anything? He just deceived us the whole time. Jihai? Jung Hee-won called out and Lee Jihai bowed her head. Jung Hee-won kept speaking. We can't ignore Dr. SC's choice just because we don't understand it. I don't know the reason, but it must have been necessary for Dr. SSI. Dr. SSI would have thought about it in his own way. Ani, do you think we are just characters? I also don't know. However, so what if we are characters living in a scenario? It is Dr. SC's fault that such a novel exists. It made sense. Kim Dokja didn't create this world. He was just a reader who accidentally read the novel. Characters in a novel, that's how it was. From the moment this damn scenario started, they were puppets of the constellations. It didn't feel very real to hear such a story now. Lee Jihai bit her lips for a long time before opening her mouth. I understand. I'll go and speak to him. Instead, Yusung and Hyunsung Ajasi should go with me. Shin Yusung and Lee Hyunsung glanced at each other after hearing Lee Jihai's words. I visited him after dinner yesterday. I talked to him 3 days ago. Lee Jihai's face was pale as she looked around the party members. What? I am the only one who hasn't gone. I had mixed feelings about the party members who came to me one by one. Lee Sealwa appeared in the middle of the night and inserted a story pack into my perfectly fine arm. Then when I opened my eyes in the morning, there was a huge monster and insect king in front of me. I was the one who did something wrong, so I couldn't figure out how to react when the party took care of me this way. If we are characters, Doc JSSI threw yourself several times in front of these characters. I remember it, and I'm sure the others do as well. Those were Jung Hee-won's words. Ajasi, I'm young and I'm not sure why you said that. Still, I know it is very hard for you right now. Shin Yusung and Lee Gil-young had told me. Doc JSSI, my manual doesn't tell me how to deal with this situation, so don't be too troubled and come back as usual. Lee Hyunsung was Lee Hyunsung as always. I'm not good at comforting people. If I'm really in that novel, shouldn't you already know? In addition, Lee Jiha. The comfort accumulated like spring raindrops. It was quiet enough not to notice it was comforting. Snow was piling up underneath the walls. It marked the winter season. I looked down at the citizens who were in the process of removing the snow. In a world turned upside down and where monsters were rampant, we still had to clear the snow. The snow that wasn't cleared in time would become solid ice and would be a nuisance. Are the preparations good? I turned around and saw Kyojios floating in the air. Kyojios had regained his momentum and had been in charge of training the group's martial arts. I'm working hard. The 80th scenario, Constellation and Demon War, would soon begin. Currently, the maximum scenario we could advance to through the context of the constellations was the 65th scenario. In order words, we had to build enough stories to break through the 65th scenario and reach the second context of the constellations. After that, Kim Dokja's company would also qualify for the 80th scenario. The stories are steadily accumulated, and we are smoothly clearing the scenario. In any case, the scenarios in the 60s have a similar difficulty apart from Gigantomachia. From Demon World Spring to Torch that swallowed the myth, we secured a different probability than before and cleared the scenarios vertically. In the scenarios in the 60s, there was no nebula that could deal with us. In addition, the promised advertisement with the mass production maker began, and the share prices of Kim Dokja's company soared. At the same time, the advertisement of the mass production maker appeared on the panel in midair. Scenario: it has numerous paths. Along with my voice that was speaking, several cars on the screen were racing towards the portal. There was only one car that didn't choose the portal. It was the X-grade Ferrari that Han Soo-young was driving. Everyone has their own way. The X-grade Ferrari passed the scattered cars and ran through the darkness. The screen zoomed in on Han Soo-young's face as she lip-synced to my words. However, the real power is to run on a road without a road. The logo of the mass production maker appeared on the black screen. I felt a bitter taste in my mouth. This old man's inspiration wasn't normal. He used the words he told me in the advertisement. I couldn't believe this advertisement would work on the constellations. The constellation, Abyssal Black Flame Dragon, likes this advertisement. The constellation, Prisoner of the Golden Headband, wants the X-grade Ferrari. Your ad has stimulated the desire to buy in some constellations. There it was. Kyagios clicked his tongue while watching the advertisement with me. The transcendent from Murim seemed unable to accept modern civilization. I can't understand. Why ride that machine? I can run a lot faster than it with my martial arts. That's true. The disciple of Breaking the Sky hasn't returned yet. I shut up at the sudden question. He could only be talking about one disciple of the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint. I'm not worried because he is someone who will find his own way. I was worried. I didn't know what that sunfish was doing again. My depression returned as I thought about the regressor. I couldn't completely cover my anxiety despite reminding myself that not many things could touch the present Yu Jonghyuk. However, I was forced to believe in him right now. It was like the days when I only knew him in print. He will appear somewhere in the next scenario area. He is such a person. Reincarnation Island won't be easy. I know. I nodded. Kyagios was a transcendent and had already visited the Reincarnation Island. Kyagios' gaze turned to below the walls. I was able to see Jang Haeyoung standing alone a bit further away from the party members. Take Haeyoung with you on this journey. This guy has made progress in breaking the sky. He won't be a burden. I was going to take him anyway. Jang Haeyoung was an indispensable figure for this scenario. The place where he got the name King of Transcendence was the Reincarnation Island. I waved lightly, and Jang Haeyoung, who was looking over here, quickly turned his head away. I gazed at the distant sky again. I could feel the vibrations of the watch needle ticking around my wrist. There were 21 days until the constellation and demon war. I quietly turned on the smartphone and opened the file of Ways of Survival. It was because of this novel that I hurt the group members, but it was also because of the novel that I could see them. In the midst of these contradictory feelings, I opened the section on the constellation and demon way. The first sentence of the constellation and demon war began as followed. Finally, the season of destruction was slowly coming to this world. The Nebula Eden. At the entrance of the martial arts hall, which normally wouldn't be popular, crowds of angels were gathered together. Ah, that incarnation is. That is a human body. The angels were peeping at a man with a bare upper body swinging a sword through the air. At first glance, he seemed to just be holding the sword, but he was actually cutting the air with the sword. Any angel with good eyes could tell that the blade was pointing down at a very fine speed. It was Yu Jonghyuk's repeated training when he wanted to forget time. It was to lengthen the time of the moment and to feel the eternity that was coming at that time. The surrounding air was roughly shaken by his movements. It was restrained like a crouching dragon. The fact that it was understated meant that there was something that hadn't erupted. It's great. Even narrative-grade constellations can't easily rush at you now. Yu Jonghyuk turned his head and saw a pale-faced archangel, the person who recorded everything in Eden. Metatron laughed as Yu Jonghyuk's eyes asked why he came. I came to give a bit of advice. If you are going to remove your top every time you train, you should move to another place. The probability density of Eden in this place is the most appropriate for training. It is thanks to you that the little angels' morals are. Metatron, why did you show me that revelation? Metatron knew the other person wasn't listening at all and changed his words. I told you it was a bargain. You will side with good at the duet between good and evil. It was nothing more than that. Are you trying to split apart Kim Dokja's company? Why would Eden do such a thing? I know that you are paying special attention to Kim Dokja. I guess that you are trying to keep his power in check. Is that why you're holding a protest here, to the point of taking off your top? Your words don't make sense. Metatron shook his head as if he couldn't tell which side made sense. Yu Jonghyuk kept swinging his sword through the air. It was like he was slowly cutting a virtual adversary. If you are going to continue with the illegal demonstration, please leave Kim Dokja's company officially and join Eden. Then you will be allowed to take off your top. Give me the next chapter of the revelation. Is that all the information you had? Haven't you thought that I might be giving you false information? It is better than the demon kings who lie. Is that why you came to us instead of Asmodeus? If the demon kings know the information, then you will definitely know it as well. Huh? Metatron still hadn't forgotten the day Yu Jonghyuk invaded Eden alone. He broke through the entrance guarded by the power's angels and virtue's angels. Even the demon kings didn't dare do such a thing. In fact, if Metatron hadn't stopped it then, Yu Jonghyuk would have died in Michael's hands on that day. Yu Jonghyuk said, "Give me the revelation. Isn't it enough that I've played your game until now?" Metatron's mouth twisted unpleasantly. A cold light flashed in Metatron's eyes as he gazed at Yu Jonghyuk. Incarnation, Yu Jonghyuk. The information I gave you isn't technically a revelation. It was information received from a special existence. Special existence? Do you really want to know? Metatron stared at Yu Jonghyuk for a moment before slowly looking up. Yu Jonghyuk also raised his head. For a moment, the sky of Eden distorted. Some of the angels around the training hall sat down with a small scream. Yu Jonghyuk instinctively grabbed the black demon's sword. A demon king? No. It was more chaos than demonic. Your sponsor feels uncomfortable with this heterogeneous being. Yu Jonghyuk blinked and his surroundings changed. It was the center of the star stream. An intangible darkness filled this space. There was a big existence that was too much even for the transcendent Yu Jonghyuk. Yu Jonghyuk asked, "Who are you?" The constellation, secretive plotter, is looking at the incarnation, Yu Jonghyuk. The darkness spoke. It has been a long time, puppet of the oldest dream. Chapter 357, Forgotten People of the Scenario 2. The winter time flowed quickly. Kim Dokja's company rapidly cleared up to the 65th scenario and reached the second context of the constellations a week ago. We finally succeeded in meeting the minimum challenge condition for the 80th scenario. The advertisement payment has arrived from the mass production maker. You have received 2,500,000 coins. The nebula's funds accumulated quickly, 2.5 million coins. It seemed that sales of the X-grade Ferraragini were booming. Now we had been paid a portion of the sales revenue, and we would continue to receive more income in the future. It's time. Finally, the day of the scenario arrived. I looked around at the prepared party members: Lee Hyun-sung, Yong Hee-won, Lee Ji-hai, Shin Yu-sung, and Lee Gil-young. In addition, there was Jang Hae-young. Dr. Sasai, is it really okay to leave this way? Lee Hyun-sung spoke in a somewhat uneasy manner. It was understandable. A week ago, my order was to rest and do nothing until the 80th scenario opened. This relaxed discipline doesn't make sense. Discipline. It was the words of a true soldier who lost his cartridge and safety pin. No matter what we do, it is impossible to catch up with the top-ranking constellations. The important thing isn't what we do here but what we do in that place. By the way, I feel like a person is missing. Soo-young SSI went first. She doesn't listen to orders. The company didn't have any employees who were good at listening. Well, Han Soo-young would surely survive. I turned my head and saw my mother and the other wanderers watching us from the front door of the industrial complex. Then we will be going. Take care. I entrusted the security of Seoul to my mother and the wanderer forces. They were people who didn't feel greedy for the latter scenarios. Rather than clearing the scenario, they were determined to live in their own way. Lee Xiaohua and Gong Pildu decided to stay in Seoul to supervise and manage the incarnations. I will leave Seoul to you. Lee Xiaohua nodded. On the other side of the square, Gong Pildu was surrounded by incarnations targeting the early-stage scenarios and was explaining something in a brusque manner. The important thing is to seize the best position. You have to occupy the good land before anyone else. Understood? It should be okay. I will join later with the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint. Go ahead. I nodded to Kyojios in the distance and sent a signal into the air. Soon, there was a low-grade Dakibai responsible for the scenario transfer. Kim Dokja's company, are the preparations finished? Start transferring us. The low-grade Dakibus recited something, and we were sucked into the portal that appeared at our feet. It was a pretty advanced portal, which meant I didn't feel dizzy when the space changed. How much time passed? You have entered the waiting room for the 80th scenario. Rather than the peaceful scenery of Gwanghwamun, a pale marble waiting room appeared. The waiting room was seething with constellations and incarnations who had arrived in advance. When will the scenario start? Open it quickly, there is no time. There were familiar faces among the constellations. One of them was the brash swamp predator. I thought he was dead because he hadn't been seen since the start of the Demon King selection, but he was still alive. Yong Hee-won muttered from behind me. There seemed to be many great constellations. Ajasi, there is Renvir Khan and Feihu over there. I can see Papyrus and Tamna. The members of Kim Dokja's company stuck to my back like penguins enduring the cold. They seemed like rural people who just came to Seoul. Lee Jihai licked his lips and asked, Ajasi, what should we do? Smile while you can smile. In the distance, a few constellations from Olympus waved to this side. Dionysus and Aphrodite. They probably didn't come to perform again this time. After that, several constellations from Vedas were soon, including the supreme god of light Surya. Maybe Anna Croft and Yu Jonghyuk would also be mixed in among them. The Demon King, Duke of Everywhere, is staring at you. The Demon King, eyes that see the forbidden, is checking you. As expected, these guys were here as well. The constellation, guardian of youths and travel, yawns as if bored. The constellation, savior of corruption, is revealing a ferocious spirit towards you. The archangels of Eden as well. The scale of the 80th scenario was truly different. We had to now compete with these terrible narrative-grade constellations. In the center of the square, a Dakibai emerged. It was Bihyung. Everyone is gathered. I am Dakibai Bihyung and I'm in charge of this scenario. General, this scenario was hosted by a great Dakibai. It seemed that Bihyung's status in the Bureau had increased considerably. Originally, the stage of the Constellation and Demon War was scheduled for another place. Then Reincarnation Island was selected as a scenario area for special reasons. Well, don't we all have to do what our bosses want? Several of the constellations burst out laughing. This was the humor of the Star Stream or the Bureau. That Bihyung jerk, he was in a form that wasn't scary. Some constellations might be unfamiliar with this stage. It is a very old place and it is rarely used anymore. It has been lost in the flow of the time. Along with Bihyung's words, images started to flow on the screens in the sky. The stage of the upcoming scenario was Reincarnation Island. We came here to participate in the constellation and demon war. I don't care about the stage. Don't expect much. This is a world with a bunch of sword masters and ninth circle magicians. The constellation spoke sarcastically like they had already experienced the scenario. Then Bihyung said, "Sword Master, this time you can leave those worries behind. It is because this world view is special." Bihyung's words caused a fuss among the constellations, but he continued speaking. In the days when the island opened, there were no concepts like Sword Master, Ninth Circle Magician, or even magic circles. This is an old island. Many constellations listened to Bihyung's words. Those paying special attention were members of the Gourmet Association. Perhaps they knew some information about this island. Well, you'll know once you personally experience it. I'll start with the explanation necessary for the scenario. Before entering the main island that is the stage for the constellation and demon war, you will experience the tutorial area first. Soon a map of the island appeared. There was a large island floating in the middle of the universe, with numerous small islands surrounding it. Bihyung pointed to the outermost islands. You will start at the island's edge, the small islands. Through this tutorial, you will learn how to adapt to the island. Then you will be given a scenario where you will advance to the main island, the main stage of the constellation and demon war. Based on the explanation, it was an existing rule of Reincarnation Island. It was a welcome thing for me. Of course, it wasn't the same for other constellations. Tutorial, we are constellations. Are you joking right now? No, of course, you don't necessarily have to perform the tutorial. There are many ways to go straight to the main island. Therefore, don't be too angry. Docubus usually speaking like this meant that if they didn't proceed with the tutorial, the scenario would be like hell. In fact, if they knew what would happen on these islands, perhaps half the constellations here would withdraw their application. Bihyung noticed my gaze and winked at me. Originally, scenarios should start without any explanation, and mine has been going on for too long. Please pick a small island to start at. If you want to start on the same island, you can choose the same island. Bihyung concluded his explanation, and the constellations started to pick their place of departure. My party members picked the same island. There was no need to split apart when we could go together. Some constellations noticed and chose the island that I chose. They were going to come out like this from the beginning. I looked around at the party members. Do you remember what I said yesterday? Jung Hee-won replied, once the scenario starts, we have to run to the middle of the island. Yes, don't think about fighting with other people and run straight to the middle of the island. This scenario was completely different from all the other scenarios we experienced. It might be the tutorial, but there was a chance the party members might not survive. I knew from reading Ways of Survival, so none of the party members questioned my suggestion. I somehow felt bitter. The constellations were ready and Bihyung's words were heard. Let's start the scenario transfer. I held unbroken faith in my hands. Every minute in this scenario was important, including the time it took to draw the sword. Everyone, let's meet in the village. At the same time, my party members and I turned into a group of lights. A new main scenario has arrived. Main Scenario 80, Reincarnation Island has begun. The message was heard and the darkness became brightly lit. The smell of grass entered my nose. I was thrown into the forest area of the island. I didn't see any of the party members around. They had probably been transferred to other places on the island. You are currently in the expedition area of Island 531. Find a village with guides. Hidden Scenario, Survival Game has begun. At almost the same time, the messages of the Docubus poured from the sky. It won't be fun like this, right? The taste of survival is a good start. Constellations, please feel like you have returned to the past through a fierce competition for survival. Hidden Scenario, Survival Game. Category Hidden. Difficulty Level, SSS. Clear conditions. Enter the island's village or kill your competitors who entered together with you. Time limit 24 hours. Compensation 50,000 coins, clear the tutorial area. Failure death. I thought it would be like this. The Dakibus who chose this island as the stage couldn't afford to let go. At almost the same time, I felt an ominous presence around me. It was too late to hide my figure. The Demon King, magic peacock of geometry, is showing hostility towards you. There was a presence in the bushes. It was one of the Demon Kings who followed me. The Demon King of the 65th Demon Realm, Andreophus. Demon King of Salvation, you defeated Demon King Amjujas. Dark blue demonic energy was burning from the hands of the colorful feathered person. Andreophus was a demon king known for having learnt all types of magic. Don't be arrogant like a stud horse. The peacock-like person spat words out of his beak and ran towards me while chanting a spell. Perhaps he set me as the first hunting game. I also ran towards him. Andreophus muttered, "Your footwork is terrible and your skills are absurd. It is the level of a normal human. You managed to beat Amjujas with only this." I ignored him and ran hard. It was much slower than usual because I wasn't using Way of the Wind. Andreophus mockingly declared, "Die." The magic he cast was the 9th circle hellfire. It was literally borrowing the flames of Hell. I wouldn't be able to endure a direct hit. However, something strange happened the moment he cast a spell. The hellfire, which should have burnt the whole forest, only made small sparks before turning off. This island's probability doesn't allow the spell hellfire. The confused Andreophus stared at me. I was now right before his nose. This island has no sword masters or 9th circle magicians. The astonished eyes of Andreophus grew bigger. Then is hellfire possible? It was unbelievable, but this was the law of the island. It was the place where the most powerful probability of the star stream dominated. There is the powerful effect of probability on this island. The attributes window isn't available on this island, and the overall stats will be reset. The system wasn't available on this island. The usage of most skills created after the first generation is limited on this island. On this island, the proficiency of stigmas and stories are reset. All the fighting skills obtained were useless. Andreophus, who was belatedly trying to cast a defense skill, got a stiff face. I ignorantly swung my sword without any skills. The blow, which contained no skill, pierced the heart of Demon King Andreophus. Unbroken faith was a few times heavier than normal. My hand holding the sword trembled. The benefits of my overall stats had disappeared. In the forest, the hot sun was burning my skin. I pulled my sword out of the Demon King's dead incarnation body while sweating. It was hard to even hold the sword thanks to my poor muscles. This is why I don't like the old stories. This world had no sword masters, no SSS-grade hunters, no systems and no attributes window. The old stories are responding to your gaze. Reincarnation Island. This was the tomb of the first generation stories that died out in the star stream. Chapter 358, Forgotten People of the Scenario 3. Lee Hyun-sung had a thought. This must be how his grandfather who fought in the Vietnam War felt. It was a lush, leafy forest. Lee Hyun-sung hid between trees that boasted an unusual size and remembered his survival training. Go to the nearby reed forest while crawling low. Lee Hyun-sung moved through the forest by alternating between low crawls and high crawls. He wanted to run to the field straight away, but there were a few groups of constellations moving. Lee Hyun-sung saw someone moving and quickly hid himself at the base of a tree, holding his breath. The Demon King of Salvation definitely chose this island. How are we going to distribute it if we hunt him? The one who cuts off his head will get half. There were the murmurs of the constellations. They were all targeting Kim Dokja. He wanted to run out and get their heads straight away. Unconditionally run towards the center of the island. Kim Dokja had told them. Only then could they survive this bloody survival game. This was the message of a man who knew the future of this world. He felt he should have asked Kim Dokja more details about ways of survival. The more information in the manual, the better. What would happen to his future self and the life he was living? It isn't the time to think useless things. Lee Hyun-sung slapped both of his cheeks. There must have been a reason Kim Dokja didn't tell him those things. Now was the time to focus on the situation. Russell, there was another noise from nearby. No voices could be heard. Someone was coming this way. There were cautious movements. It was a person who had the basics of using cover. The sound was getting closer. Russell, if they kept coming in this direction, they would encounter Lee Hyun-sung sooner or later. Lee Hyun-sung nervously pulled out a dagger. Kim Dokja told them to avoid combat as much as possible, but that couldn't always happen. I should do it well if I can't avoid it. In the past few years, Lee Hyun-sung became much stronger than before through training. Now he wasn't the soldier who turned away from injustice in the first scenario. Finally, the other person was right in front of him, yet something felt strange. The pattern of a special uniform could be seen through the long reeds. Lee Hyun-sung muttered reflexively, "He-1SSI." "You, The sword of judgment popped through the bushes. Lee Hyun-sung reflexively bent his waist and avoided the sword. After a while, Jung Hee-won's head protruded from the bush. "Hyun-sung SSI, I'm sorry." "It's fine, are you okay?" However, he wasn't able to be glad about meeting his colleague due to the desperate situation. He sighed and saw the two children glued firmly to Jung Hee-won's waist. They were Shin Yu-sung and Lee Gil-young. Lee Hyun-sung watched the sickly pale faces of the two children and asked, "What is the status of the children?" "I don't know exactly, I just met them. They must have seen something shocking." A shocking sight. Certainly, this island was a strange place. The Heracles shield on Lee Hyun-sung's back was very heavy. It was an item that he normally would have felt the weight. Lee Hyun-sung carried Shin Yu-sung and said, "I think we should go to the center of the island and meet Dokja SSI." "Where is the center of the island?" "The direction of the smoke." He looked up and saw smoke rising through the big trees. It wasn't too far away. Lee Hyun-sung started to move with Jung Hee-won. Maybe it was due to the presence of a strong colleague, but the heartbeat seemed to be moving at a different tempo. How long had it been? They soon arrived at the edge of the forest. A large field unfolded in front of their eyes. It wasn't far away from the location where the smoke was ignited. The problem was that there were a bunch of people blocking the field. Jung Hee-won frowned and opened her mouth. "Do you think they are chasing us?" The constellations armed with weapons and star relics were searching around the field. Among them were people Lee Hyun-sung had seen earlier. "Don't fight and run. It is better to avoid them, but..." Once they entered the field, they would surely become visible. There was a way around the forest, but they couldn't guarantee how long it would take. Then Shin Yu-sung opened her mouth from Lee Hyun-sung's back. "Ajasi, excuse me." Shin Yu-sung's finger pointed to the forest on the opposite side of the field. Something was running. There were rough and wild cries. Lee Hyun-sung was familiar with the monster species that emerged from the forest. They were monsters that regularly appeared in fantasy manhwa and novels. Jung Hee-won asked, "Aren't they orcs? They are too weak to appear in the 80th scenario." Orcs, they were representative monsters that emerged in numerous fantasy genres. I've never fought an orc up to now. It was strange when thinking about it. Orcs were famous monsters that everyone knew about, yet they made it to the 80th scenario without meeting any orcs. In the field, the constellations exclaimed, "Ignoring us to this degree. Releasing this crap." They also thought it was absurd. As if there was no need to use a weapon, a single constellation stretched out his fist towards the rushing orcs with an annoyed expression. They were usually monsters that would be killed in one blow. Yet at this moment, something strange happened. An orc swung its axe and the fist of the constellation was broken. The moment the bewildered constellation was about to shout something, another stone axe came flying from somewhere. The head of the constellation literally burst apart. The incarnation body of the constellation fell down stupidly. The orcs roared and laughed, turning the field into a terrible place of slaughter. Quack, the fearsome constellations who could break mountains and split apart the sea. These constellations were dying, their bodies torn apart by only two orcs. Yong Hee-won and Lee Hyun-sung fell down as well. It was reality without a sense of realism. It was that easy to die, a constellation, to an orc. Run away. The orcs tore apart 10 constellations in an instant and were approached this forest area. Please don't let me meet orcs. I repeated this prayer in my head as I moved through the lush forest. My breathing was intermittent in this heat, and my steps were heavy. I hadn't walked for very long, but I was feeling exhausted as sweat flowed all over my body. I didn't know the absence of my stats would be this great. It was unavoidable with only 1 point in physique. To make matters worse, it felt like my shoulders were being forced closer together. This was the reality of the island. Reincarnation Island. It was the place where the oldest stories of the star stream were gathered. Here, all the buffs accumulated from outside data were released. In other words, it was a place where only the innate abilities of the body were available. This was why I could easily defeat the 65th ranked Demon King. Many constellations neglected physical training. Then once they entered this island, they made a mistake of misinterpreting their combat power. It was the same for Andreophis. You have killed 1 competitor to date. You will receive additional rewards when entering the safe zone. I tried not to miss the occasional message as I moved through the shade created by the lush trees. In order to prevent dehydration, I plunged my face into a rare stream and drank the water. It was clear and cold enough that my soul felt purified. The first-generation water is so clean. In fact, I wasn't adverse to the old stories. As a reader, I liked the old stories. A story of heroes filled with dreams and adventures, fighting dragons in forgotten mountain ranges or looking for a legendary sword with beautiful elves and brave dwarves. The problem was that I now entered the old story, a world without the power of the attributes window and no convenient functions. The danger here wasn't only the monsters. Since I couldn't receive the effects of the skills, my immune system would decrease, and I had to be wary of the cold and diseases. In the original novel, some constellations died after being affected by infectious diseases. In fact, the following sentence had appeared in Ways of Survival. The constellations, who were accustomed to the attributes window and the convenience of the system, died powerlessly. They were able to raise a proper resistance to the world that couldn't be read with their sensibilities. The constellations, who reigned in the star stream, died because they couldn't overcome diseases or orcs. Some constellations couldn't endure the disgrace and took their own lives. It was funny. The participants of Island 861 are wiped out. The participants of Island 1896 are wiped out. It had started. By now, the entire island would be engulfed in a terrible tragedy. The constellations died to lesser monsters that they had been ignoring in the meantime. Many constellations are greatly shocked by the difficulty of Reincarnation Island. Many constellations are sending a protest message to the Bureau. It was useless to protest. The island was originally like this. Demon kings or archangels, anyone could die in this place if they were a bit careless. I reflexively held my breath as I heard a sound coming from a nearby bush. I only knew 1 monster on the island that made a cry like this. It was a small monster half my height with green skin. A goblin, I sighed with relief. It was worth an attempt if it was a goblin, not an orc. There was a deafening roar. I reflexively swung my sword in the direction of the cry. My body was dragged in the direction of the swing due to my poor strength. Fortunately, the first one who jumped out was hit by the blindly swung sword and rolled on the ground. The problem was after this. 1 law of the first generation: goblins will never move alone. 2 goblins jumped out after the injured goblin and rapidly narrowed the distance, swinging their clubs. The club swung by one of them caused a long scratch on the outside of my left thigh. Damn, in this place, the goblins were scarier than the demon kings. The exclusive skill, Fourth Wall, is activated. If it hadn't been for the fourth wall, I might have died to the goblins like other constellations. Then an ominous voice was heard. The administrator of the island is concerned about the fairness of the skill you are using. The administrator of the island declares this skill isn't available here. The probability of the star stream agrees with the administrator's complaint. The fourth wall is revealing discomfort. Kimdakya so RRY. Huh. I have no string th on this is land. I felt the barrier covering my spirit fatting. It felt like a sensation sleeping inside me was activated. At this moment, I realized what was happening. The thickness of the fourth wall has become thinner. Your mental strength, reinforced by the fourth wall, has returned to its original state. The physical pain relieved by the fourth wall has returned to normal. Damn it. Chapter 359, Episode 67, Deceased of the Scenario 4. I swallowed my curses. If the fourth wall became thinner. There was a strange pain during the battle that I had forgotten. The cuts on my shin and arms were sore. My sweaty shirt was more uncomfortable, and the heat of the forest made me dizzy. I would have exercised more if I knew this would happen. A spiked club flew towards my head. I rolled my body and avoided a goblin's attack. My joints creaked as I moved hastily. The goblin followed my avoidance path with the club like they were catching a mole. The fuzz on the back of my hand rose as blood stained the thorny club. It was obviously a smell I've encountered many times, but it was strange. The fourth wall has become very thin. The fourth wall is shaking dangerously. I jumped up from my position and corrected my sword posture. The two goblins lost their companion and were surrounding me with red eyes. At any time they would rush forward and kill me. The moment I read this desire, the fear of death came to me. Beyond the thinning fourth wall, the emotions I had ignored were gushing out. The story I looked at was actually something like this. I controlled my trembling breaths. I had to fight. I could fight. All my companions fought through this fear. I was the only one who cowardly avoided the pain using the wall. Kim Dokja held unbroken faith with trembling hands. Let's think. How could I hurt the goblins with my current body? Skills couldn't be used, but stigmas were still available. The level was reset, but it was possible to use stigmas. The problem was how to apply the stigma. I saw the approaching goblin and cast Song of the Sword. This isn't your stigma. The effect of the stigma is fixed to the minimum. The second day, sunny, I went out early and checked the weapons. Unbroken faith emitted a faint sheen and returned to its original state. It would have been nice if a fire arrow emerged, shit. It was comforting to feel that my sword was a bit lighter. Keek. The goblin laughed at my resistance and swung its thorny club. The club hit the sword and my wrist seemed to break. The goblins looked sloppy, but they were more powerful than humans. They were monsters optimized for survival on this island. Then the second club flew towards my waist. It was too late to block it with my sword. I swung my feet and kicked the club. There was the sensation of thorns piercing the soles of my feet. I bit my lips from the terrible pain. The angry goblins cried out at the smell of blood. If the stigma couldn't be used, then I had to try the second method. The giant story, Demon World Spring, is responding to your will. On this island, skills were sealed and the proficiency of the stigmas was reset. This did mean there was no power available. The giant story torch that swallowed the myth is responding to your will. Something existed even in the first generation without magic circles. It was stories. Currently, you can't exercise control over these stories with your power. Your stories are rejecting your domination. The problem was that my strength was drastically reduced, and the stories didn't listen to me. The giant story, Demon World Spring, is looking at you with regret. The giant story torch that swallowed the myth covets your weakened body. Blood rose inside me because of the heat. The goblins momentarily shrank back from the power of the stories felt from me, but they soon recovered their momentum and rushed forward. The stigma was blocked and the stories didn't listen to me. I gritted my teeth as I watched the incoming goblins. In the end, there was only the last method. I hadn't wanted to use this if possible. It happened the moment I firmed up my heart and raised my magic power. A dagger flew through the bush and pierced the goblin's head. The goblin collapsed in front of me. The blade headed towards the other goblin's neck with fantastic swordplay. I watched the girl's ponytail flying and sighed with relief. Ajashi, are you okay? The mud-covered Li Jihai turned her head and stared at me. In fact, the use of Song of the Sword wasn't just to confront the goblins. Like the system message stated, Song of the Sword wasn't my stigma. If I used this stigma, the master of it would surely become aware of my existence. Phew, I'm glad it is Ajasi. Li Jihai washed her face in the stream. Li Jihai had also experienced a considerable degree of hardship. What the hell is this place? Skills and stigmas are all useless. I would have died if I hadn't received training from Grandfather Kiagios. Are you injured? No, I hid well. By the way, what's wrong with you? It just happened. I was placing the cut medicine received from Li Xiaohua on my wounds. I couldn't believe I was injured this much fighting the goblins. I couldn't guess how hard it would be in the future. Li Jihai watched me and grabbed the cut medicine like she was frustrated. Give it to me. You can't apply it to your back. Li Jihai placed the cut medicine on my wounds. Be gentle. I might die if you press hard against it. Don't be a crybaby. By the way, were you this small? My muscle mass was just reduced a bit. Your shoulders look similar to mine. My pride was hurt, so I took back the cut medicine. No, I tried to take it back but failed. It was because Li Jihai was more powerful than me. Li Jihai spoke in warning. If you move, your shoulder will break. It had been a long time since I felt so helpless. Now it's all done. The effect of Li Xiaohua's cut medicine was quite good despite the probability of the first generation. It wasn't dramatic, but the wounds covered by the cut medicine were healing quickly. There were magic and martial arts even in the first generation. Li Jihai and I continued to walk through the forest after taking care of my wounds. Fortunately, night was coming. Li Jihai measured the smoke rising from the center of the island. It seems we will have to camp here today. I nodded. We can move all night, but nighttime skills weren't available, and we could meet enemies that were much worse than the goblins. The night of the island has come. At night, some of the system's functions are restored. The Dokibai bag feature is now available. I immediately opened the Dokibai bag and bought a few necessary items. There was portable accommodation for 2 people and safety devices for securing the perimeter. There were also recovery items, just in case. Li Jihai received the items from me and blinked. What? You could buy something like this in the first generation. In the end, the coin usage scenarios remained the same. Whether it was the first generation, second generation, or third generation, the essence of the scenario was money. Thus, it was obvious that the use of the D-Akibai bag would be granted. Li Jihai was setting up the tent and looked at me like I was pathetic. Ajasi, I heard you've been to the army. Why don't you know how to set up a tent? It has been a long time since I was discharged. Why are you so good at it? I was in the Scouts when I was an elementary school student. Come to think of it, there was that setting for Li Jihai. Li Jihai watched me struggle from the strength reduction penalty and set up my tent for me. Night in the forest was cold. We gathered the surrounding twigs and lit a fire. In front of the blazing bonfire, Li Jihai and I were immersed in our own thoughts. I wasn't using Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint, but I could see that Li Jihai wanted to say something. I patiently waited. Li Jihai threw a dried branch onto the burning flames and finally raised her courage. Ajasi, can I ask you something? Ask. When did that novel start? I thought this question would come out. I decided to answer honestly, more than 10 years ago. My memories were a bit dim, but I hadn't forgotten what happened in the days when I first clicked on ways of survival. How do I appear in the novel? The question was normal. I would also be curious if I was in Li Jihai's shoes. I took my time to recall the description of Li Jihai. Admiral Li Jihai, the girl who pulled out her sword to protect her companions. Her pride was strong, but she was more affectionate than anyone else. Her heart was always revealed on her face. I tried not to touch on Li Jihai's wounds as much as possible as I carefully chose the details to tell her. Li Jihai had a suspicious look on her face as she opened her mouth. It's so good that I feel bad. There was that much detail. The novel is a bit long. Even so, oh, how do you remember all the details? I read it a lot. Still, to remember it so meticulously, I feel bad. This was my only answer. I was a middle school student at the time, and my only hobby was reading the novel. Ajasi was a middle school student. Puahat, then you were younger than me when you first read it. That's ridiculous. Everyone was 15 years old once. The constellation, Abyssal Black Flame Dragon, is raising his head. Li Jihai laughed like she heard something interesting. That's right, I was also 15 once. Li Jihai looked down at her sheath with nostalgic eyes. A small keyring was hanging from the sheath. I read Ways of Survival, so I naturally knew the identity of the keyring. Are you okay? Do you know about this keyring? A little bit. There is nothing private. The keyring Li Jihai always carried with her was given by her friend who died in the first scenario. The sentences of Ways of Survival passed through my mind. Jihai, kill me, it's okay. Li Jihai was the wounded sword demon. Even if her characterization changed one day, this face wouldn't change. Li Jihai was a person who never forgot the sins she committed. Do you know what happens to me at the end of the novel? Li Jihai's words caused a story I had long forgotten to appear in my mind. I knew the ending of Ways of Survival. Jingle. Then a bell ringing entered my ears. It was a sound from the safety device I placed beforehand. The sound of the bell soon continued in a horror-like rhythm, as if to rip off my ears. Jingle, 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 jingle. Jingle, 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 jingle. Ajasi. Something was coming this way. It wasn't a goblin or orc based on the interval of the ringing. It was a much stronger monster. I gauged the direction of the rising smoke and said, "You will live to the end and be happy." It was the same in the novel. It was a lie. However, the novel was a lie in the first place. I lived so far to make my lies a reality. Run towards the village. I will buy time. I don't want to. Ajasi, you run away. Aren't you weaker than me? You can't deal with this monster. It isn't possible even if we join forces. Li Jihai was only able to deal with goblins with her current abilities. I spoke calmly. Go to the village quickly and get help. That way, both you and I can survive. You can move faster than me. But, hurry, I have some way to avoid it. Really? Of course, don't you know who I am? Li Jihai nodded as if relieved. Hold on for a while, I will bring back help. A few seconds after Li Jihai disappeared, a giant green monster appeared in the forest. It was a monster over 3 meters with a terrifying atmosphere. Damn, it was a troll, not an orc. I was lying when I said there was a way to avoid it. The entire party couldn't cope with this troll. It would be good if they weren't wiped out. Grrr. The troll found me and revealed horrible teeth as it laughed. The troll's iron club was covered with fragments of the constellations, as if it had already broken the heads of numerous constellations. I smiled bitterly and gripped the sword. I would probably die from just one hit of that club, at least if there was no one to help me. Grrr. In the first place, this island was impossible to attack in a normal way. As always, there were hidden pieces in impossible scenarios. It was time for them to show up, according to the original novel. The moment the troll's growl soared into the sound, a piercing sound was heard. A familiar blade was piercing the belly of the troll. It was Li Jihai. I knew this would happen. You are a liar. The Admiral doesn't abandon her colleagues, even if it means dying. This operation was possible from the beginning because I believed in Li Jihai. The angry troll drew out the sword and made a strange noise. The wound was restored in an instant. It threw the sword and Li Jihai laughed from beside me. Let's die together, Ajasi. I saw the troll running towards us and laughed too. Li Jihai wouldn't die. The history of her life would eventually save her. The moment the Trolls Club fell, a sound was heard from the forest. It came. A silver sword split apart the darkness. I watched carefully. The pure sword that wasn't an ether blade cut the fearsome troll's neck like a toy. The favorite themes of the first-generation forgotten people are love, friendship, and romance. First Generation, one of the oldest stories in the star stream. The master of that story was talking. Sacrificing your lives for your colleagues. This is the first time in 381 years. I looked closer, and it wasn't only one person. There was no need to speak. They are such friends. Really, there are still good stories out there. The laughing voices spread out. Something was strange. This wasn't in the original novel. Then I saw the faces of those walking out of the darkness. It's been a long time. Has it only been 3 years in outside world time? Surprisingly, it was someone I already knew. Chapter 360, Episode 67, Forgotten People of the Scenario 5. A handsome beard and thick eyebrows. The thick lips that showed a unique, upright personality. The man who appeared from the darkness was exactly the same as when I met him 3 years ago. Goryeo's first sword. I didn't know we would meet in such a place, Kim Dokja. A constellation of the Korean peninsula, Cheok Yungyong was on Reincarnation Island. I was indebted to Cheok Yungyong from Dark Castle to the Demon King selection. I swallowed down my pleasure. Cheok Yungyong was a good constellation, but his purpose here was unclear. It was time to look at the other person's purpose. It would be difficult if his purpose conflicted with me. I was worried because you haven't been sending any indirect messages. I have been refraining from broadcasting on the stream for a while. On closer examination, Cheok Yungyong's entire body seemed much more refined than before. Something flashed in my mind. Did you come to the island before the start of the scenario? It's been 15 years already. 15 years. At this moment, a sentence of ways of survival rose. Reincarnation Island is located in the Dark Fault. It might be 3 years in Earth hour, but time within the Dark Fault was a few times faster. In fact, Kyejios and the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint had also been here. At present, the time density of this island was around 5 times that of Earth. The reason you are here. Cheok Yungyong shook his head. It might be an outer god, but I still wasn't able to withstand it. There was a scene playing in my head. It was 3 years ago, the day when the 73rd demon realm was destroyed. Cheok Yungyong lost his incarnation body while dealing with the disaster. The prideful Cheok Yungyong was greatly shocked that there was such an existence in the world. Thus, it was even more amazing. The other constellations had their egos crumble at the mere sight of the disaster, while Cheok Yungyong was still trying to tear down the disaster. Perhaps this was the theme of the constellation, called Goryeo's first sword. I felt that I had to train again from the very basics. This island is the perfect place for such training. Cheok Yungyong spoke while looking at the people moving through the bushes in front. They had good mobility even in this hot and sticky forest. They were probably the forgotten people of this island. One of them noticed my gaze and walked over. You managed to survive. Usually, the constellations from the outside die in less than an hour. Apart from that monster Cheok over there. Thank you for your help. I am Kim Dokja. I deliberately didn't say my modifier. Among the first-generation forgotten people, there were many people who considered the modifier to be pretentious. The man laughed as if he liked my answer. I have long forgotten my name. That is what everyone does when they're here. The man spoke and moved ahead. The forgotten. They were those who forgot their names after numerous reincarnations. However, they didn't really forget their names. It was just that reminiscing on the past became too painful. An old scent was felt from the bodies of the forgotten who were opening the path. A very strong, curved, and hardened story. Li Jihai whispered, "How are they so strong?" It was natural to be curious. The forgotten people themselves didn't feel particularly great, yet they used a single strike to kill the troll we struggled with. The quantity and quality of their stories seemed better than us. No matter how good the stories, It is useless if they can't take advantage of it properly. Li Jihai stared at me with questioning eyes. The moment I tried to speak, I was interrupted by Chiak Yungyong. He's right. Even if there are 10 swords, humans could only hold 2 swords properly. Goryeo's first sword. His body was a sword, his heart was a sword, his story was a sword. Li Jihai looked down at her hands like she gained profound enlightenment. In the meantime, Chiak Yungyong stared at me with a deep gaze. You have collected many great stories. You won't fall behind the top-rated constellations right now. You're overpraising me. By the way, you've accumulated too much in a short period of time. Do you know what state you are in right now? I closed my mouth. In these eyes, I was currently in a very precarious state. The giant story torch that swallowed the myth is aiming for your incarnation body. The story person who opposes the miracle is doubting your qualifications. The story one who killed an outer god is dissatisfied with you. It was the same in practice. I raised the giant stories wrong and almost had my life snatched away by the stories. If that happened, I would become the same as the constellations I met at the duet between good and evil. Don't forget, after an existence creates a story, the story creates an existence. I already knew. I came to this island knowing it. I will keep that in mind. Not long afterwards, we arrived at the village. You have arrived in the first safe zone. You have met the conditions to clear the main scenario of the 133rd small island. You have met the conditions to clear the hidden scenario. You have received additional compensation for killing a competitor. Additional compensation is being prepared. The village was peaceful. After passing through the main entrance, there was a lifestyle that revolved around a huge hearth in the center. It was different from city life. A stay-at-home woman in scruffy clothes was feeding a cow, while a bearded man was doing laundry. There were also children who seemed younger than Gileung and Yusung. It was an incredibly rural village where the first-generation forgotten people lived. It is really amazing here. Yusengas SI. Ah, sorry, did I surprise you? It's fine. Is it okay to talk now? Yes, it is break time. The wall is also busy. For some reason, Yu Sanga's voice felt closer than usual. The fourth wall had become thinner, making her activities more convenient. This village is like a mural that many artisans painted over the years. I was inwardly amazed as I heard Yu Sanga trying to find the right words. It was apparently ordinary, but as Yu Sanga put it, the reality of this village was never ordinary. I might be a visitor, but I could tell by the sight of the residents living their lives as usual. They looked bored, as if they had seen this hundreds of thousands of times. Shit, I almost died. This crazy island, are they really orcs? I looked up at the true voices and saw a group of constellations appearing at the opposite entrance of the village. I quickly looked at the faces of the group. Unfortunately, the faces of my party members couldn't be seen. Instead, I saw an unpleasant guy. Demon King, eyes that see the forbidden, is looking at you. The Demon King with fiery eyes in the shape of a black panther. He was one of those I saw when I visited the 1863rd round. The master of the 61st Demon Realm. Eyes that see the forbidden, Floros. He was the one who died from Yu Jonghyuk's fist in the 1863rd round. The Demon King followed me to this island. Floro stared this way with strange eyes before turning his attention elsewhere. It was obvious even without reading his face. He probably judged that this wasn't a favorable place to fight. Chiak Yungyong standing next to me would have surely noticed it. I glanced at Chiak Yungyong beside me. What did you have to say? It's nothing. They were really strong and reliably shoulders. I was envious. Is this the end of the scenario? Hey NPCs, guide me. The constellations entered and the village became a bit crowded. One of the residents frowned at the turmoil occurring everywhere and responded, "This is the end of the small island. There is no sincerity in your words. Well, the scenarios are all created by the Dakibus." Now that there were no monsters, the constellations were regaining their spirit. The story weak against the strong and strong against the weak has started. The voices of the stories were flowing from the eyes of the constellations. As expected, Chiak Yungyong was correct. There were no exceptions, whether they were constellations or incarnations. If we didn't live the stories properly, the stories would live instead of us. Are there no additional rewards here? Should we search through the houses? There might be some hidden pieces. The residents felt tired and replied, in a voice that found the situation troublesome. There are no such things. The small island scenario is over. Those who want to go to the next scenario should enter the hearth in the center of the village. It is the portal. Some of the constellations frowned at the cold tone, and Demon King Floros stepped forward. The NPCs are really noisy. It is up to us when we want to leave here. Perhaps he was looking for an opponent to go against, as he suddenly raised his status. I have found a village like this. It isn't bad to rest for a while. Bring out some drinks and food. This body is very hungry. The violent words caused the other constellations to laugh. Li Jihai frowned and came forward. Just wait. Perhaps there was no room for us to intervene in this fight. In fact, the villagers weren't fazed at all by the threat of the Demon King. The man washing his laundry yawned with boredom. NPC, always NPC these days. The kids think of life as a game. An old man carrying a Korean A-frame said, "It is a strange fate today. I have no enthusiasm and passion." The woman feeding the cows also added some words. "Spit. This is why I was against opening our island. No matter how urgent the need for coins, do I have to watch these snobs entering. It is better to raise a few cows." The flowing words were heard clearly. The situation headed in a strange direction, and the constellations started to notice. Floros let out a roar. "Why are these group of bugs?" The little boy sucking candy in front of them said, "You are the bugs who haven't lived for 1,000 years." Floros' mouth dropped open. He was the one who reigned over the 64th demon realm, and it was natural for him to react like this. It must be the first insult he had ever received. A wicked expression flashed across Floros' face. The scenario didn't tell me not to kill NPCs. The Demon King let out a powerful status. The moment he roared and revealed his fangs, all the residents of the village gazed at Floros in unison. The man doing the laundry, the woman placing food and water in the trough, the old man carrying the A-frame. It looked like the whole world froze. The constellations sensed the strange air and faltered. The same was true for Floros. He was a fairly keen Demon King and must have noticed something weird. Perhaps he was thinking this way. What the hell are these guys? However, he couldn't back down here. His ego as a Demon King wouldn't tolerate being suppressed by the inhabitants of a small village. In the end, Floros chose the one who looked the weakest. Die. Floros' claws aimed towards the little boy eating the candy. However, this was a completely wrong choice. He clenched his fists, then the fist was there. Something exploded. The fragments of an incarnation body scattered through the air like fireworks. Floros' incarnation body lost his head and slowly sank to the ground. Eyes that see the forbidden has been eliminated from the scenario. The constellations witnessed the death of the Demon King in front of them and withdrew with a shudder. What this? The residents showed little response to the astonishment of the constellations. It was a serene atmosphere like no one was holding a funeral for the bug. The man started the laundry again and the woman gave water to a cow. The old man shook his head and cutting at a tree. The kid sucking the candy declared, "Get out of the way. I don't want to see you anymore." The pale incarnations and constellations fled through the portal. In any case, the small island scenario had ended. There was no reason to hesitate anymore. After disappearing through the portal, there were less than 10 constellations remaining. The huge story torch that swallowed the myth wants you to go to the next scenario. From the moment I faced this child, my giant stories reacted violently. Maybe they noticed something. I smiled bitterly and approached the child who killed the Demon King. The giant story torch that swallowed the myth is threatening you. I didn't know that Floros would be so helpful. I was relieved to find what I had been looking for. The giant story torch that swallowed the myth declares that it will destroy your incarnation body if you keep approaching him. I ignored its words and continued forward. The swirling giant story was emitting threatening air currents. I was annoyed by the childish story who thought it was a provocation against him. What, do you want to be like that guy? One invincible fist, Yu Hasung. You taught the breaking the sky sword saint in Kyejios. The expression of the child changed. The inhabitants of this place were all reincarnators. Their age couldn't be read from their appearance. The child in front of me was a reincarnator who had lived for at least 10,000 years. The child narrowed his eyes and asked me, "Who are you? What is your relationship with those children?" The giant story torch that swallowed the myth is revealing its teeth to the presence in front of you. There was another reason I came to Reincarnation Island. Based on the future battles with myth-grade constellations, I had to obtain something from this place. I swallowed the rising blood and spoke in a congested voice. One invincible fist, please teach me story control.